Chapter 6:16. People who don't attract jealousy are mediocre. Lan Shanggu wasn't mediocre. He was the most outstanding and dazzling figure in the younger generation of the Lan family. He was selected as one of the 4 prodigies of Huacheng by busybodies. It was also because of Lan Shanggu's excellence that he became the target of love and special care by all the elders of the Lan family. Whether it was the old man of the Lan family or the other elders of the Lan family, they all nurtured him as the successor of the Lan family. Unexpectedly, Lan Shanggu actually fell out with his family because of an investment. He didn't even hesitate to betray the Lan family. In the eyes of some people in the Lan family, his behavior was a betrayal. Big families naturally had their pride. No one had ever dared to take the initiative to propose a separation from the family. Lan Shanggu tore apart the Lan family for his own benefit. In the eyes of many people, he was a shameful traitor. When Lan Shanggu was doing well in the Lan family and monopolizing power, the younger generation in the family admired him. However, when he became a traitor and abandoned by the Lan family because of a stupid choice, the long-suppressed jealousy and hatred in the hearts of the younger generation in the family turned into a heavy hatred. It was like weeds in the spring field, crazily popping out. Of course, there was a special reason why Lan Tingyue targeted Lan Shanggu. After Lan Shanggu and the Lan family separated, the Lan family pushed his brother, Lan Shonhua, to take over Lan Shanggu's position as the new successor of the family. Lan Shanggu hadn't returned home for several years. The position under Lan Shonhua's but became more and more stable. Now Lan Shanggu drove back in the middle of the night. In Lan Tingyue's eyes, he saw a dangerous signal. This was a dangerous person. Lan Tingyue originally thought that his mocking words would make Lan Shanggu leave. When he was about to start his newly bought sports car and enter the courtyard, he inadvertently saw a dazzling light from the rearview mirror. No, it was a black front that looked like a beast opening its bloody mouth and pouncing at him. Clang! The tall and rough body of the Hummer rumbled forward. The hard metal bumper fiercely bit the sexy butt of the Lamborghini that stretched out like a wing. Not only that, the Hummer didn't stop immediately after smashing the butt of the Lamborghini. This big monster continued to charge forward under the control of Lan Shanggu. Kacha kacha, the back half of the Lamborghini was rolled up by the mouth of the big monster. The Hummer opened its mouth and continued to roll over Lan Tingyue in the driver's seat. Lan Tingyue was scared out of his wits. His face was pale and his pupils dilated. He pushed the car door open and wanted to escape, but he was pulled back by the seatbelt and couldn't move. Lan Mountain Valley. Lan Mountain Valley. Lan Tingyue screamed. Lan Shanggu stepped on the accelerator and drove the Hummer to continue attacking the city. Help! Lan Tingyue was so scared that his nose was running and his tears were running. He cried out, "Help, big brother Lan, don't kill me." Bang! The Hummer finally stopped, but the engine was still running. The Lamborghini's weak body, which was pressed under his body, was shaking non-stop. Lan Shanggu looked down and stared at Lan Tingyue, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. He said arrogantly, "Now, can I go in?" Lan Tingyue couldn't say a word. He was so scared that he peed his pants. The hot air from the front of the Hummer poured on Lan Tingyue's back. His body was already soaked in sweat. "You called me a coward." "I'm not angry at all." Lan Shanggu stared at the back of Lan Tingyue's head and said, "I'm angry that you are a real coward." "He is a child." A young man in a white shirt stood at the door. He had a pair of black-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose. He looked very scholarly. He looked at Lan Shanggu with a smile and said, "Big brother, why do you stoop to the level of a child? Isn't it not worth it to hurt your own body?" Lan Shonhua, Lan Tingyue's big brother. He was also the new person pushed out by the Lan family after Lan Shanggu left. When Lan Tingyue saw Lan Shonhua come out, it was as if he saw help. He cried and said, "Big brother, quickly save me, he wants to kill me." Lan Shonhua shook his head and sighed. He walked over to help Lan Tingyue untie the seatbelt and said, "Big brother rarely comes back. How did you make him angry? Also, What nonsense are you talking about? Big brother is our big brother. How could he kill you? You must have said something you shouldn't have said, there was such a big commotion outside. Even Grandpa was woken up by you guys. Just wait to be scolded. Lan Shonhua didn't even look at the crashed Lamborghini. In his eyes, it was a toy not worth mentioning. Lan Shanggu looked at Lan Shonhua and said with a smile, the men of the Lan family must have murderous intent. Tingyue has been spoiled by you guys. I'm here to cultivate his murderous intent. Lan Tingyue originally wanted to counterattack and say that you're not here to cultivate my murderous intent. You want to kill me. But when the words were on the tip of his tongue, he met Lan Shanggu's deep and cold eyes when he smiled. He couldn't shout out the words he had thought of. Lan Shonhua glanced at Lan Tingyue and said, you stay here and bring some people to clean up this place. Won't it be a joke if outsiders see this? He walked to the window of Lan Shanggu's car and said with a smile, Big brother, Grandpa asked me to invite you in. Lan Shanggu nodded and said, let's go. After saying that, he drove the Hummer and took the lead to rush into the courtyard gate. Lan Shonhua stood where he was and looked at the square-shaped big man with a warm smile. Brother, Lan Tingyue ran to Lan Shonhua's side and said angrily, why did you let him in? Didn't you also not stop him? Lan Shonhua said with a smile. But, Lan Tingyue seriously thought about it and realized that even his brother had no way to stop Lan Shanggu. Lan Shanggu's personality was arrogant and despotic. There was really no one in the younger generation who could suppress him. Even in his uncle's generation, there was no one who could suppress him. Otherwise, how could he be allowed to leave the Lan family? And even take away such a big piece of the cake? The old man of the Lan family had a habit of sleeping early. When he heard the commotion outside, he got up again. Winter was still far away. The old man had already wrapped a blanket around his body and sat in the study connected to the bedroom. He said to Lan Shanggu, who had entered the room, why are you angry with a child? Making such a big commotion, aren't you afraid that people outside will laugh at you? Lan Shanggu smiled and walked in front of the old man. He poured a cup of warm water and placed it in his hand. He said, why should I be afraid of people laughing at me? Those people who laugh at me will soon know that they are actually fools. But I am a little unhappy about doing this. It is a big sin to disturb Grandpa's rest. The old man waved his hand and said, all right, you haven't come back to see me for 3 years. The moment you come back, you are trying to bewitch me. What do you want? Grandpa, hand the Lan family over to me. Lan Shanggu rubbed his hands and said with a serious face. I promise that you will be able to manage the Lan family well. All the businesses will flourish, and the family's rise will be just around the corner. The old man swallowed a mouthful of hot water with great difficulty. He glanced at Lan Shanggu and said, I am not dead yet, and you are already thinking of usurping the position? How can this be usurping the position? Is there such an open and above-board usurper like me? Lan Shanggu's face was full of smiles. He said, this is something that the two of us, grandpa and grandson, have discussed and discussed. I made a very good suggestion to you, and you accepted my suggestion without hesitation and passed the position of the clan leader to me. If this matter succeeds, hey, the two of us will become a great story, after I die. The old man said while coughing. He looked very agitated. Lan Shanggu hurriedly ran over to massage the old man's back. He said, I was just joking. You don't have to take it seriously, but you can't not take it seriously either. This matter is worth considering. After all, you know those children and grandchildren of yours. There are a few good ones among the sons, but among the grandchildren, only I am outstanding. Lan Shonhua is a little too sissy. I have bullied his own brother to this extent, but he still doesn't dare to rush up and fight with me. Can such a person become the clan leader of the Lan family? You have been in the military your whole life. You can't let this kind of sissy ruin your foundation, right? Old Master Lan started coughing again. He pointed at Lan Shanggu and scolded, is this how you evaluate your brother? I am just speaking the truth. Lan Shanggu was worried that he had angered old Master Lan to death, so he really didn't dare to spout nonsense. Grandpa, since you are not willing to hand the Lan family over to me, then you have to give me some compensation. Withdraw the Lan family's shares in the Longtu group, right? Old Master Lan stopped coughing and stared at Lan Shanggu with a piercing gaze. He asked, "Did that fellow with the surname Fong ask you to look for me?" "I didn't expect this. I really didn't expect this. That little loach has really grown up and actually has the position of authority in this watching. You won the bet and came back to flaunt your strength?" "He didn't ask me to come." Lan Shanggu sat down in front of Old Master Lan again and said, "Jiang Junling has disappeared and Jiang Zhulu has been arrested and imprisoned. Who is the person in control of the Longtu group now?" "It's Jiang Shangxin, Jiang Zhuliu's wife. You must have known long ago, right? Jiang Shangxin has become Fong Yan's woman since a long time ago." Old Master Lan's eyes widened and he said angrily, "The two of them got together? Disgraced, truly disgraced. These people can do anything shameless." The elderly valued the relationship between a man and a woman the most. From his point of view, Fong Yan was worse than a beast for getting together with someone else's wife. Lan Shanggu stared at Old Master Lan with his eyes wide open and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Old Master, aren't you a little too open-minded? I only said that Jiang Shangxin has become Fong Yan's woman. I didn't say that she has become Fong Yan's woman." Chapter 617. What was the difference between his men and his women? Lu Shu was Fong Yan's man, Lan Shanggu was Fong Yan's man, Du Qing was Fong Yan's man, and Jiang Shangxin was Fong Yan's man. They were comrades in arms, an alliance. They were like grasshoppers on a boat. However, his women had another meaning. Lu Chaoga was his woman. The little princess of the Qin clan was also his woman. Although Old Master Lan was old, he was still very clear about this. He looked at Longu Valley and asked, "Busybodies have named you kids as the four prodigies of Huaqing. Even though it's a little childish, it still represents the four most powerful clans in Huaqing. The Jiang family has fallen to such a state, it really makes one sigh. If the Jiang clan is gone, will the other clans really be able to protect themselves? Grandpa, can you protect them?" Lan Shanggu asked back. Old Master Lan was furious. He raised something in his hand and wanted to throw it at him. He shouted, "Why can't I protect them? Could it be that in your eyes, that fellow is already unstoppable?" Lan Shanggu sighed softly and said, "Grandpa, I don't think that he is unstoppable, and it's not because I'm inflated after winning. Think about it, how many resources and connections does Fong Yan have now? He has the support of the Lu clan, the support of Lan Shanggu, the support of Du Qing. He has the powerful Chaoyan technology, Longtu is under his control, and the support of the Qin clan. Grandpa, if he really wants to make a move against the Lan clan, how do you think we can fight back?" Old Master Lan laughed coldly and said, "The Lan clan is doing business properly. Would he dare to take it by force? Grandpa, nowadays, no one is stupid enough to do things like taking things by force. The risk is too high, and the loss outweighs the gain. He only needs to use the resources under his banner to force the living environment of the Lan clan. As long as he makes a move, countless people under him will follow suit. By then, what will the Lan clan do? The Lu clan isn't on his side either, right? Won't the Mei family stand up and say something? Of course, the Lu family won't be on his side. However, the Lu family will make a wise choice, to follow the Wolf King and eat the meat and drink the soup, or to become the prey that the Wolf King leads the wolves to attack and devour. They will make a wise choice. As for the Mei family is different from us. They had their own way of survival. Why would they care about the life and death of others? Even if Grandpa wanted to join hands with them, he would probably have to give up a considerable portion of the benefits, right? They want shipping. Are you willing to give it to them? According to what you're saying, our Lan clan has nowhere to go. That's not it. Lan Shanggu said, hasn't Grandpa already made his choice? Grandfather chose the Jiang family and chose to rely on the Jiang family's power. If this was the capital city or any other city, I would suggest that Grandpa make this choice. You have no choice but to do so. But Grandpa, this is Flower City. Our roots are in Flower City. You think I made the wrong choice? Old Master Lon held his teacup and looked at Lon Gulu with a piercing gaze. At least for now, it seems to be wrong. Lon Shangu said straightforwardly. Old Master Lan's eyes turned cold and he fell into a long silence. Lon Shangu waited for Grandpa to think for a while before saying, Jiang Zhulu is in jail and won't be able to come out for a while. Fang Yen didn't let anyone else control Longtu. He didn't even use his most trusted person, Lu Chaoga. Instead, he sent Shangxin in. This means that he doesn't want Longtu to be separated. He wants to use Shangxin's identity to take over Longtu. If the Lon clan still wants to have a share of the loot, there will be a huge feud. Old Master Lon looked at Lon Shangu and asked, are the things that Jiang Zhulu did true? They should be. Lon Shangu nodded with a serious expression. Even though a tiger is ferocious, it doesn't eat its cubs. How is this behavior different from that of a beast? This time, it was Lon Shangu's turn to remain silent. Old Master Lon looked at Lon Gulu and said, father and son killing each other and brothers fighting each other, this is a tragedy. I don't have any other requests from you. I only want you to keep this family and prosper in everything you do. No matter what, Lon Shangu nodded and said, Grandpa, I understand. Old Master Lon nodded in satisfaction and said, what you mean is that we can't keep the shares of Longtu no matter what? We can't, Lon Shangu said. Old Master Lon took a sip from his teacup and said, you're the eldest son and grandson of the Lon clan. Splitting up in a fit of pique, the things you brought out with you are ultimately still too little. This is a little unfair to you. I'll give you the little bit of shares that the Lon clan has in the Longtu Corporation. Think of it as some compensation to you. Lon Shangu stared at Old Master Lon with his eyes wide open and said, Grandpa. Old Master Lon sighed softly and said, you and Fang Yen will advance and retreat together. He can't possibly forcefully take over his own brother's shares, can he? If that's the case, how is he different from a beast? Who would dare to work with him in the future? Lon Shangu felt that he had fallen into a huge pit. A bottomless pit. Someone knocked on the room door. Lon Shangu looked outside with a smile and said, I guess it must be Lon Shonua. He raised his voice and shouted outside, come in. The room door was pushed open. It was indeed Lon Shonua standing at the door. Lon Shonua carried a tray in his hand and walked in with a smile on his face. He said, Grandpa, big brother, I knew that you two would talk until midnight, so I asked the kitchen to make a bowl of sweet distiller's grains for you two to eat while it's hot. Fill your stomach. He placed the tray on the table and placed a bowl in front of Grandpa and Lon Shangu each. He said, you two take your time, I'll go out first. With that, he carried the tray and walked out. Lon Shangu looked at Old Master Lon and said, a scholar who has been away for 3 days has changed my opinion of him. Old Master Lon had a smug look on his face. He said, spring is when 100 flowers contend. Mo Qingdi and Ice Dragon were living together. Just like a loser who had met the Ms. Perfect in his life, Mo Qingdi's life in the land of extreme coldness had undergone a complete change. He lived in a large, unique, and luxurious house with icicles hanging from the ceiling. He ate all kinds of rare and precious celestial fruits that he had never eaten before. Even the place where he slept at night was covered with red feathers. A red feather was a red bird on the glacier. Because Mo Qingdi had not seen anyone else in the land of extreme coldness, no one had told him the name of this bird. Mo Qingdi had been in this glacier for many years, but he had only seen this bird a few times. There was a large pile of bird feathers in Ice Dragon's cave. Mo Qingdi tidied it up. It was much more comfortable than the down quilt he used in Yanjing. It had to be said that his current life was much better than living in the igloo that he had carved out with a knife. Life was so blissful and comfortable, but Mo Qingdi could not help but worry about one problem. How could he get Ice Dragon's blood and tendon? If he could not get Ice Dragon's blood and tendon, Would he have to stay in this land of extreme coldness for the rest of his life and become a pair of dragons of life and death with Ice Dragon? The Azure Dragon had met the Ice Dragon. His ice-cold heart couldn't help but ripple after ripple. It was dinner time now. Ice Dragon gave Azure Dragon a look, signaling him to wait for a while. Then he wagged his tail and ran into the deep cave. This was the only thing that Azure Dragon was not satisfied with Ice Dragon. Every time it was time for dinner, Ice Dragon would give Azure Dragon a smug look, meaning to say, "Wait for me to get you something to eat." After a while, he had piled up in front of Enchanting with all kinds of food in his mouth. It was said that every dragon had a treasure trove, and inside the treasure trove were all kinds of rare and strange treasures. There was one time when Enchanting wanted to go in with it to have a look, but the little transparent dog just stood there, not moving an inch. It only looked at him with a sad look in its eyes. "I'm already so good to you, how can you ask for more?" Enchanting was embarrassed by the dog's stare. He turned around and ran to a corner to sit down. Only then did the transparent puppy scuttle into the depths of the cave with a whoosh, disappearing without a trace in an instant. Ice Dragon was very fast. He did not have to wait too long before he came back with a big pile of food in front of Enchanting. There was snow snake meat, red silk fish, 9 petals snow lotus, baby ginseng, and red lava fruit. Ice Dragon held a red lava fruit in his mouth and put it in front of Enchanting. Then, he rolled his tongue into a baby ginseng and chewed it. Enchanting pushed the red lava fruit back, then reached out his hand to touch the thick 9-petal snow lotus. Ice Dragon saw Enchanting's action and once again held the red lava fruit in his mouth in front of Enchanting. He even winked at Enchanting, as if saying, "I know you like this, don't be shy with me." Enchanting shook his head and pushed the red lava fruit away again, then reached out to touch the red silk fish. Ice Dragon used his claws to pull the red silk fish under him, and once again pushed the lava fruit to Enchanting. After doing this, Ice Dragon glanced at Enchanting with a reproachful look. "Eat it, don't waste my good intentions." "I mean," Enchanting looked at Ice Dragon and said awkwardly, "can we change it?" Ever since Enchanting ate the lava fruit on the first day he came to the Ice Dragon's lair as a guest and expressed high praise for the food, the Ice Dragon would push a lava fruit in front of Enchanting every time it was time to eat. For the first few days, Enchanting enjoyed the food quite a lot. The meat was crispy and juicy, and it was a rare and precious fruit in the world. After eating for half a month, Enchanting could not stand it anymore. He needed a change of taste, right? Chapter 618. The more he tried, the further he went wrong. Enchanting wanted to eat something else. He wanted to eat a ginseng, a snow lotus, a red silk fish, or even a snow snake. After eating lava fruits for more than 10 days and 30 meals, Enchanting even began to miss the disgusting and nauseous flame rats he used to eat. However, Ice Dragon could not understand Enchanting's thoughts. The first time it met Enchanting, the image of Enchanting's eyes shining when he saw the lava fruit in its mouth was still engraved in its mind. Later on, whenever it placed the lava fruit in front of Enchanting, he would eat it cleanly with a face full of joy and delight, not even spitting out the core of the fruit. Only the dragon race would be so extravagant as to think that it was necessary to spit out the core of the lava fruit after eating it. In this world of ice and snow where not even a blade of grass grew, it was an extravagant hope to see a small flower or grass. To encounter such a rare fruit was a great blessing. The core of the fruit was also an extremely rare and precious object. How could Enchanting bear to spit it out? The idea that Enchanting liked to eat lava fruits was deeply ingrained in Ice Dragon's heart. Ice Dragon was a hospitable host. Since there was a guest in his territory, he naturally had to offer his best and favorite food. "Don't you like to eat lava fruits?" "It's okay, I have plenty at home." In Ice Dragon's eyes, Enchanting's act of pushing the lava fruits to him was humble and embarrassed. Ice Dragon thought that the weird-looking monster in front of him must have felt bad for eating too many of his magma fruits, so he wanted to return them to him so that he could enjoy them as well. Too polite. Ice Dragon didn't know how to speak. If it could, it would have said this sentence. It couldn't understand what Immerse was saying, but judging from his expression, the ice dragon stared intently at Immerse's expression. It tilted its head and thought for a while, then lowered its head again and placed the lava fruit in front of Immerse. Don't be polite with me. Ice Dragon wagged his tail. He had an expression that said, I understand your kindness. Although I like to eat it, I can give it to you since you like it. Immerse sighed deeply. He wanted to go home. He returned to his igloo, caught a snow snake or killed a flame rat, skinned it, cleaned it, and froze it. He wanted to eat meat. Seeing Immerse's moved expression, Ice Dragon became even more pleased with himself. It jumped up and down on the spot, looking like it was asking for a beating. It used its claws to push the lava fruit in front of Immerse, signaling him to pick it up and eat it. Thank you. Immerse took the magma fruit and took a big bite. His mouth was full of juice, but he still felt that there was a bird in his mouth. If only there was a bird in his mouth. The ice dragon also began to eat. As usual, it ate the baby ginseng, the snow lotus with 9 petals, the red silk fish, and the snow snake. Feeling that it was still not full, it ran to its mouth and grabbed a few snow-like objects that Immerse had never seen before. It chewed on them with a loud crunching sound. Ice Dragon ate very quickly. After finishing the pile of heaven and earth treasures, Immerse had only eaten half of a lava fruit. Ice Dragon looked at Immerse with a face full of blame. Why are you eating so slowly? Look at how good I am. After Immerse had finished eating the lava fruit, he washed his hands and face with the icy water in the cave pool. Then, he began to practice his martial arts. Immerse had to practice. First, it was to resist the bitter cold, so that his body could always be at its healthiest. In this extremely cold place, there were no doctors, and probably no other human beings. If his body became weak or he noticed some other symptoms, then only death awaited him. In addition, Immerse was also digesting the energy that the lava fruit gave him. Immerse did not know where this lava fruit came from, and he had never even seen a tree with this fruit. However, he could feel that this fruit was very beneficial to his body. The lava fruit was fiery red in color, sweet and juicy, and it felt cool and delicious when eaten. But when the fruit entered his stomach, it began to emit a strange heat. It was like accidentally eating an aphrodisiac like, I love a piece of firewood, causing an inexplicable heat in one's body. If one sat there without moving, this heat would last for a long time. As long as one exercised intensely, the heat would spread faster. Immerse had just eaten another lava fruit, so he had to exercise again. Now he had to exercise 3 times a day. Ever since his tendons and veins were broken, he had never been as diligent as he was in this extremely cold place. Every time Immerse practiced, Ice Dragon would sit beside him and watch for a while. It never sat or squatted. Because Immerse had never entered its real cave, he did not know what kind of posture it was when it slept. Perhaps there were other beauties hidden in the golden house? Thinking of this possibility, Immerse felt a trace of anger in his heart. As usual, after watching for a few minutes, Ice Dragon felt that Immerse's kicks were very boring, so it flicked its tail and rushed into the depths of the cave like the wind. Immerse was very conflicted. He wanted to heal his meridians and body, and he wanted to go back to check on the current situation of the Fang family and see if Fang Yan could hold on by himself. If he wanted to go back as soon as possible, he could only kill Ice Dragon, drink its blood, and extract its tendons. However, if he did that, how could he be worthy of its life-saving grace? How could he be worthy of its deep friendship for treating him with good food and drinks every day? It was hard to advance, hard to retreat. He was in a dilemma. Just as Immerse was lost in his thoughts, the sound of screams and howls suddenly came from the outside. As Immerse listened attentively, a gust of wind blew past him. The transparent puppy had already run out to watch the commotion. This dog. Ever since Fang Yan brought Jiang Shangxin to the Chao Yan Underground Research Institute, she had settled down there. Even though Jiang Zhulu had been taken away by the police and most of the threats to her safety had been removed, she still had no intention of leaving. That place gave her an inexplicable sense of security. Of course, it was indeed very safe there. This was the first time that Jiang Shangxin had come to this neighborhood, and she felt that it was necessary for her to pay a visit to this legendary woman. Lu Chaoga. Her story had become a compulsory subject for the students of various business schools, and her photos and interviews frequently appeared in domestic and international financial magazines. Goddess of Flame, sexiest CEO, most intelligent woman, #1 on the charity rankings for 3 consecutive years, the actual controller of Chao Yen's science and technology, and the mysterious woman behind Fang Yen, she was dazzling and full of honors. Jiang Shangxin was a proud woman. However, even such a proud woman like her would be jealous of Lu Zhaoga. This woman had lost a lot, but she had gained even more. Before knowing her story, it was hard to imagine how a woman could live such a rich and colorful life. Jiang Shangxin suddenly had this thought, and she couldn't suppress it after it appeared in her mind. Let's go and see Lu Chaoga. Why do I want to see her? Jiang Shangxin thought to herself. Firstly, it was to thank her for being willing to provide her with a place to stay when she was in the most difficult and dangerous situation. Jiang Shangxin was very clear that if it wasn't for Lu Chaoga's permission, Fang Yen wouldn't have been able to bring her to such an important place like Chao Yen Underground Research Institute. Although Fang Yen had a lot of say in Chao Yen's science and technology, Lu Chaoga was the real owner of Chao Yen. Chao Yen, Chao Yen. The word Chao came before the word Yen. Secondly, it was because of admiration. Jiang Shangxin had known her for many years, and the two of them had quite a bit of history. Before she appeared, Lu Chaoga was Jiang Zhuliu's admirer, and she knew that the Jiang family had always wanted Lu Chaoga to become Jiang Zhuliu's daughter-in-law. After that, Lu Chaoga and Qiang Longtan had a falling out, and she forcefully tore off a large piece of Longtu Group and left. Naturally, she established her own company and created Chao Yen Science and Technology. The first time they met was by chance at the shopping mall 3 years ago. When she and Jiang Zhulu went shopping, Lu Chaoga and Fang Yen also appeared at the shopping mall. At that time, she only had some appreciation and admiration for Lu Chaoga. She felt that this woman was courageous and knowledgeable, and it wasn't easy for her to get to where she was today to be able to fight with an opponent like Qiang Longtan. There was also a little jealousy in her heart. At that time, she really liked Jiang Zhulu, and she didn't want the man she liked to be thinking about other women. A current girlfriend and an ex-girlfriend were natural enemies. Of course, it was just a little. Who would have thought that in just a few years, Lu Zhaoga would be able to achieve such brilliant and dazzling achievements under the watchful eyes of countless enemies, open spears and covert attacks? How much was Chao Yen's science and technology worth now? One media outlet had a very good evaluation, "Don't talk about money with Lu Chaoga." Everyone's focus now was on whether Chao Yen's science and technology could become a great company. Or rather, whether it could become the greatest company in the world. Jiang Shangxin pressed the doorbell, and the door to the courtyard opened very quickly. The moment Jiang Shangxin entered the door, she saw Lu Chaoga, who took the initiative to walk out to welcome her. She was dressed in a white tracksuit and a pair of white sports shoes, and her long hair was tied into a ponytail. She was like a newlywed who had just gotten married and walked out to welcome her guests with a face full of smiles. Jiang Shangxin had never seen Lu Chaoga dressed like this, but deep down, she had to admit that this Lu Chaoga was really beautiful. She was even more beautiful than when she was on the cover of a magazine. Chapter 619. In the media, Lu Chaoga was aloof and elegant, just like a goddess in the clouds. While people worshipped her, it also created a sense of unreachable distance. In Jiang Shangxin's eyes, Lu Chaoga was smart, sharp, and cold. She was good at forbearance. Some people described Jiang Zhuliu's father as a scalper and a dog. However, Jiang Shangxin felt that Lu Chaoga's scheming ability and ability to hide her emotions were not inferior to Qiang Longtan's. When she was still a child, she already knew how to deal with the murderer who killed her parents and finally avenge her parents. How much willpower did it take? There was an old saying that went, "Kings don't meet kings." Because of some reason, Jiang Shangxin would more or less see Lu Chaoga as her competitor. However, when she saw Lu Chaoga come out to greet the guests in such a simple home attire, Jiang Shangxin suddenly realized that she might never be able to catch up with Lu Chaoga's footsteps. Some people did it as if it were heavy, while others did it as if it were light. Perhaps, in her heart, she had never seen herself as a competitor. It was a fortunate and sad thing. "I'm sorry to disturb you so abruptly," Jiang Shangxin looked at Lu Chaoga and said apologetically. Lu Chaoga smiled, and it was like a spring breeze blowing on her face. Jiang Shangxin dared to swear that no media could capture such a smile from Lu Chaoga in the past. Because Jiang Shangxin had studied Lu Chaoga's appearance records, she had never smiled before. At this moment, Lu Chaoga was blissful, and that kind of bliss was emitted from the inside out. It was like a woman who couldn't help but smile foolishly after falling in love, and she couldn't hide it even if she wanted to. Lu Xiaoga took the initiative to stretch out his beautiful palm towards Shangxin and said in a gentle voice, "I was supposed to be the one to visit you, but I've been too busy recently. I'm very happy that you're here as a guest." Jiang Shangxin sighed to herself. This woman was indeed a formidable person. When he was in trouble, he came to seek shelter, and even until now, he was still living in the underground research institute under her name. She didn't mention or ask about it when she saw him, as if she didn't know about it at all. Needless to say, that was the most embarrassing period of time for Shangxin. A spike in her bone, a scar on her face. If it weren't for Fang Yan who pulled down the plane to Paris in time, the news of her accident would have spread to China. Lu Chaoga's way of handling things made her feel very comfortable, and she felt that she was respected. Why did best friends end up fighting each other to the death? Because he asked too many questions. Jiang Shangxin held Lu Xiaoga's hand tightly and said, "I saw an interview about you in the World Finance and Economics 2 years ago. You said that you like to study recipes during your free time at work and cook a delicious meal for yourself. I wonder if I will have the fortune to do so." Lu Chaoga made an inviting gesture and gestured for Jiang Shangxin to follow him into the house. She said, "When you participated in the Midnight Storm interview, you said that your ideal life is to be a full-time wife who takes care of your husband and children. I guess your culinary skills are pretty good, right? How about we each cook 2 signature dishes? Isn't there still soup?" Jiang Shangxin looked at Fang Yan, who was standing by the window on the second floor, and said, "Mr. Fang should be able to make soup, right?" "No problem," Lu Chaoga said. "The fish soup that Mr. Fang makes is superb, you should try it. It's definitely not to be missed." Jiang Shangxin's face was full of smiles and she said, "In that case, I can have a good meal today." Fang Yan did not know that he had fallen into the trap of the 2 women. At this time, he was standing on the balcony and calling his grandfather, Fang Hui. "Don't always play with the bird. How old are you? Why are you always fighting with a parrot?" Fang Yan comforted him. Fang Yan talked to his mother on the phone, and Lu Wan said that his grandfather was in a bad mood these days. The King Kong eagle that he had raised for 3 to 4 years suddenly ignored him. In the past, the man and the bird would have quarreled with each other every day. The King Kong eagle suddenly stopped talking, which made Fang Hui very anxious. He kept provoking it, wanting to hear it fight back as usual. However, the King Kong eagle seemed to have lost its voice. No matter what Fang Hui said or did, it just stared at him blankly without saying a word. Later, Old Master Fang Hui seemed to understand something, and he stopped talking. The man and the bird stared at each other for a long time. This made Lu Wan very anxious, so she called Fang Yan to persuade Fang Hui. "So what if I'm old? Old people are not allowed to play with birds? Which family's rule is this? If I don't play with birds, what should I do? I want to hunt bears in the mountains and catch turtles in the sea, but I need him to listen to me. If he doesn't listen to me, where can I go? I can only play with the old bird to kill time. Fang Yan felt bad and said guiltily, Grandpa, why don't I go back and bring you to watching? Didn't you say that? When you were young, you were invincible in watching. Now that you are back in the old place, maybe you can recall your past glory. Is that all right? I will book a ticket back to Yanjing tomorrow. Go, go, go. I am living well in Swallow Dock, why would I go to watching? Let me tell you, I am not going anywhere, you don't have to think about it. Fang Hui refused firmly. Then I will go back and stay with you for a few days? Fang Yan said with a smile. I also want to eat my mom's pork stewed with vermicelli. Fang Hui sighed and said, Fang Yan, don't bother. I know what you are thinking, and I understand your filial piety. But watching is full of things now, you can't leave, and you can't leave. Are you worried that I will become demented like that old bird? Or are you worried that I will leave with it one day? Grandpa, Fang Yan said in a sorrowful voice. His father passed away, Mo Qingdi went missing, and the two closest men to his grandpa left. His father was his grandpa's son, and Mo Qingdi was also his grandpa's son. Although he had never said anything in the past few years, and would never confide in anyone, his heart was just too bitter. He was such a proud man, how could he bear such a blow? In the 3 years that Fang Yan suffered, Grandpa Fang's body became weaker and weaker. No one knew when the oil lamp would burn out. Even a gust of wind could blow him out. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are human nature. Who can defy the heavens? Fang Hui said gently. His words carried the bleakness of the autumn wind and the falling leaves. I don't know how much merit we have to cultivate for the heavens to let us come to this world. Originally, it should have been you going your own way and I going mine, but because we had unresolved grievances in our previous lives, I became your grandfather, and you became my grandson. Fang Hui, have never let down the heavens, and never bow down to anyone. I have trained hard and lived my life seriously. My life has come to an end, and I have lived my life to the end. But your life has just begun. You haven't lived a single Cho Mao Yin yet. You have to continue working hard and don't waste your time on an old man like me. It is too precious. We can't afford to waste it. Grandpa, is there anything more important than spending time with you? Fang Yan endured the pain in his heart and said with a smile, there are shortcuts when it comes to being a person or doing things. For example, if I want to practice martial arts, I have to find a good master. You and the old drunkard are good masters. They can teach me quickly and help me improve faster than my peers. It is the same with being a person. If I want to live a single Cho Mao Yin, I will stay by your side and listen to you tell me about the ups and downs of life. I like the stories you tell me, and they contain profound philosophy. After listening to you for 30 to 50 years, maybe I will become the smartest person in the world. Fang Hui was amused by Fang Yan's words. He laughed and scolded, Bullsh *T. How many stories do I have to tell you for 30 to 50 years? At that time, I will be more than 100 years old, and you will be 70 or 80 years old. A 100-year-old monster telling a 70 or 80-year-old man how to be a person? If someone saw this scene, they would have a heart attack. Hearing his grandpa's hearty laughter, Fang Yan felt a little better. He said, if someone saw this scene, they would definitely think of us as immortals. I am an old immortal, and you are an old immortal. I will give you 2 roasted chickens and a pot of plum wine. We can even have a drink. You're just making things up, kid. Fang Hui said with a smile. After a pause, old Master Fang said in a deep voice, I went to see Master 2 days ago. I will go to Master and ask for justice for you. What did Master say? Fang Yan's heart sank as he asked aloud. Bai Xiu was Master's student. Bai Xiu and Jiang Junling had planned that fatal trap, but in the end, Fang Yan had counterattacked and stabbed Bai Xiu to death. Did Master know what Bai Xiu had done? What would Master think about Bai Xiu's death? Fang Yan had to consider these questions, and he had to think of the worst. Master said. Old Master Feng Hui's voice was low and powerful. He said, he should give you an explanation for this matter. He asked you to come back when you have time. You should come back too. That child Wenwan seems to be advancing again. If you don't work harder, you will fall behind her again. You will be bullied by women for the rest of your life. I understand. Fang Yen said with a smile. When Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan came to Huacheng, they had said that Yi Wenwan had gone into seclusion again. During this time, Fang Yen had been unable to contact her. Every breakthrough was a rebirth. It was full of hope, but also unknown danger. Fang Yen wanted to go back and face it with her. I will go back as soon as possible. Chapter 620. Every moment in the business world will not repeat itself. The next Bill Gates will not develop an operating system, and the next Larry Page or Sergey Brin will not research on search engines. The next Mark Zuckerberg will not create a social network. You have a better starting point, you have better resources, and you are much richer and stronger than they were when they started. Why must you make a cell phone? When Jiang Shangxin heard Lu Chaoga say that Chaoyan Technology wanted to make its own cell phone brand, she looked at her in disbelief and said, the competition in the cell phone market is intense now, and more than 90% of the market is occupied by cell phone giants like Apple, Samsung, and Xiaomi. How much effort will you have to put in as a newcomer? How much attention can you attract? There are countless people who want to overthrow the hegemons, but almost all of them have been wiped out. You could have done something that changed the world. From 0 to 1, Lu Chaoga said. This is the business logic of Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal and the first external investor of Facebook. He is the greatest investor, and he believes that innovation is not from 1 to n, but from 0 to 1. Are you his believer? Yes, this is a great person, and he always wants to do something that will change the world. He believes that the greatest mediocrity is imitation. Jiang Shangxin did not hide her admiration and respect for that venture capital emperor. She said, so, he did it. He became a god in the hearts of countless entrepreneurs. You should be such a person, and not repeat the same things as those mediocre people. You have the Chaoyan Empire, and you have a technological killer like the Rubik's Cube. How much technology can a cell phone have? No matter how great those cell phone manufacturers are, they are only at the level of technology that those small factories in Shin City can achieve. Even the standby time is longer than those branded phones. I think it is a waste of resources for you to make a cell phone. Lu Xiaoga held on to the fragrant tea in his hands and looked at Jiang Shangxin with a smile on his face. He said, Grim Gale once said that from the perspective of practical economics, an enterprise must first survive before it can think about innovation. But your business is already doing very well, and you don't lack money at all. No, it is not strong enough. Lu Chaoga's voice was gentle, but there was a burning ambition in her eyes. I said that I want to make a strong business empire, and I want it to be the strongest backing. Everyone in the world needs a cell phone, and I will not let go of this market. I know that Apple and Samsung are very strong, and I know that they have occupied more than 90% of the market, but, no matter what, I am willing to fight for it. Jiang Shangxin stared at Lu Xiaoga with a burning gaze and asked, everything that you have done, is for Fang Yen, right? Lu Chaoga took a sip of tea and said with a smile, Lu Chaoga said, Fang God. For others, for myself, this is what I want to do, what I am willing to do. We have to chase after something in life. Making Chao Yen the most powerful business empire is my life's pursuit. Jiang Shangxin nodded her head seriously and said, yes, it feels so good to work hard for your dreams. Have you made up your mind? What? Lu Xiaoga looked at Jiang Shangxin in confusion. If you have made up your mind, bring me along, Jiang Shangxin said. I don't want to miss the birth of a great cell phone, no matter if I invest in Longtu Group or in my own name. Lu Chaoga extended his hand to Jiang Shangxin and said, welcome. Jiang Shangxin shook Lu Chaoga's hand and said, so, have you thought of a name for the cell phone that is going to turn the world upside down? Lu Chaoga shook her head and said, I haven't decided yet. I have a suggestion, Jiang Shangxin said. Fang Yan happened to come downstairs and saw Lu Chaoga and Jiang Shangxin shaking hands and chatting happily. He smiled and said, "Did I see something that I shouldn't have?" Jiang Shangxin then let go of Lu Chaoga's hand and asked Fang Yan, "What kind of content do you want to see? Tell us, we might be able to satisfy you." Lu Chaoga blushed. She didn't want to explain anything and just lowered her head to drink her tea. The moment Fang Yan imagined the scene of Shangxin and Lu Zhaoga tearing each other apart and rolling around, he felt as if his nose was going to bleed profusely. He switched the channel hurriedly and sat down opposite Shangxin. "Why are you here?" Jiang Shangxin was very dissatisfied with Fang Yan's question. She looked at Lu Chaoga and said, "Sister Lu, Fang Yan doesn't welcome me." Lu Chaoga rolled her eyes at Fang Yan and scolded him for talking nonsense. She comforted Jiang Shangxin and said, "Treat this place as your home. Come and talk to me when you have time. Sister Lu is so hospitable, much better than some people," Jiang Shangxin said with a smile. Fang Yan was secretly surprised. Based on his understanding of these two women, this was the first time that they were sitting so close to each other and chatting. In such a short time, they were already addressing each other as sisters. They didn't like each other in the past. "You couldn't wait to fall out with me and I couldn't wait to scratch one of your eyes, okay?" Women's feelings were really inexplicable and frivolous. Lu Chaoga placed the teacup on the coffee table and said to Fang Yan, "Shangxin and I have already discussed it. We will each make 2 of our specialties and we need someone to make a soup." Fang Yan nodded and said, "I will call Fang Yingying in. His tomato and egg soup is very good." Sister Lu said that the fish soup you make is the best. Jiang Shangxin squinted her eyes at Fang Yan and said, "Mr. Fang, we are so busy doing this and that because of you. It shouldn't be a problem for you to make a bowl of soup to reward us, right? Both of you have already discussed it. Do I still have a chance to reject?" Fang Yan said with a bitter smile. Jiang Shangxin made 2 dishes, crispy pork ribs and fried bean skin with oil. Lu Chaoga made her specialties, steamed fish with black bean sauce and tofu with spring onions. Fang Yan made a fish soup. During the meal, Fang Yingying would come in from time to time to take a look. He would praise Lu Chaoga for being more beautiful than 2 hours ago and Jiang Shangxin for having such an outstanding temperament. He would even go against his conscience and say that Fang Yan was gentle, generous, and a good uncle master. Of course, Fang Yan still chased him out. There were a total of 4 dishes and 1 soup. He would only be 80% full even if he ate all of them. If he came in, Qining might also shamelessly follow him in. If the 2 of them were to clean up the place, what would the others eat? After the meal, Lu Chaoga cleared the dishes and Fang Yan accompanied Jiang Shangxin for a walk in the backyard. "Jiang Zhulio's secretary is now my subordinate. With her help, I can quickly understand the internal situation of the Longtu group. I have talked to all the senior management in the group and roped in a group of people. I have also warned and dealt with a group of people. I have already taken a preliminary control of the situation. Now, the work of the Longtu group is being carried out in an orderly manner." Jiang Shangxin reported some of the affairs of the group to Fang Yan. "However, I am worried about the counterattack of the others. You also know that the Jiang family and the Lan family have just made a large-scale investment in the Longtu group. They still hold a large share of the shares. Although the ratio of the shares held by both of us is the dominant one, if they want to do something, it will still be very disadvantageous to the Longtu group." Fang Yan looked at Jiang Shangxin's thin side profile. He had pushed this woman to a prominent and dangerous position. She had managed to control such a complicated situation in a short period of time. He had to admit that she was extremely strong in terms of temperament and ability. Given time, she would probably become another all-powerful business leader. "You don't have to worry about the Lan family," Fang Yan said. Jiang Shangxin's eyes were filled with joy. She said, "Have you settled the discussion with the Lan family?" Fang Yan shook his head and said, "I have not discussed it with the Lan family." Jiang Shangxin was a little disappointed. However, she did not hide her emotions in front of Fang Yan. She said, since the discussion has not been settled, why do you say that I don't have to worry? Because I have discussed it with the old master of the Lan family, Fang Yan said with a smile. When? Jiang Shangxin smiled again. 3 years ago, when you confronted Jiang Junling, the Lan family chose you. However, the Lan family chose Jiang Junling. Left with no choice, the Lan family could only leave the Lan family and become the laughingstock of the entire Huacheng and the circle of young masters. Many people said that he was stupid. For a guy who had just emerged, he did not hesitate to give up his biggest backing. Without the support of the Lan family, would the Lan family still be the Lan family? What right did he have to become one of the 4 talents of Huacheng? It had only been slightly more than 3 years. Everyone already knew about the accuracy of the Lan family's foresight. Those who had mocked the Lan family are probably thinking of ways to get close to him now, right? The fact that the old master of the Lan family could choose to stand on our side is a huge boost to our abilities. The Jiang family can't hold the fort alone. The Longtu group is no longer at risk. I have not met the old master of the Lan family before. Fang Yan said, however, since we can address him as the old master, it proves that he is a wise old man. If I were him, the best way to get out of this situation now would be to transfer all the shares of the Longtu group that the Lan family holds to the Lan family. In this way, not only will they not lose their face, but they will also be able to preserve their reputation. Most importantly, he has given me a difficult problem that I have to solve. Jiang Shangxin's eyes flickered. She said, he is a schemer. In this case, are you going to accept the shares of the Lan family? Chapter 621. If you were me, what would you do? Fang Yan asked. If you accept it, it will definitely make Lanshan Valley feel disgusted. After all, he was the one who stood on your side from the beginning. If you don't accept it, these shares will fall into the hands of Lanshan Valley, which is no different from still being in the hands of the Lan family. If the Lan family makes use of this to create trouble, it won't be a good thing for Longtu, you, and me. It's a dilemma. Jiang Shangxin analyzed and said. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled. He said, actually, it's not that difficult. You already have an answer in your heart? I believe in him, Fang Yan said. Lanshan Valley is Lanshan Valley. Even if he returns to the Lan family in the future, he will still be Lanshan Valley and my friend. Jiang Shangxin's eyes lit up and she said, you're not worried at all? I prefer to turn my worry into confidence in them. Fang Yan smiled and said, this world is full of darkness, but we still have to choose some people to believe in. What about me? Jiang Shangxin asked. Am I someone you trust? Of course, Fang Yan said. Otherwise, why would I still let you stay in Chaoyan's Underground Research Institute until now? You should know what that place means to me and Chaoyan. It's far more important than me pushing you to the front desk of Longtu Group. I understand. Jiang Shangxin nodded solemnly. Fang Yan, although you never mention it, and Lu Chaoga is also unwilling to mention it, no one knows better than me that my life was saved by you. You can't imagine how depressed and desperate I was when I went through all that, when Jiang Zhulu bit my finger. Thank you. Fang Yan waved his hand in embarrassment and said, actually, I wanted to make use of you when I saved you, of course. In a world like this where everyone is so busy, who would suddenly treat someone so well if they had no desires? Jiang Shangxin said with a smile. Moreover, you won by being honest. I'm really not a good person, Fang Yan said. But I'm not a bad person, you are my benefactor, Jiang Shangxin said. That's enough. Women's understanding of good and bad is very vague. What they care more about is, to her, what kind of person you are. Fang Yan nodded and said, is there any news about your mother? I'm still waiting, Jiang Shangxin said. Without the protection and help of the general family, I'm just a weak and pitiful woman. What can I do? I've talked to Du Qinggo. He's already sent people out to search. If there's any news, he'll contact me immediately. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Jiang Shangxin looked at Fang Yan with a face full of gratitude and said, Fang Yan, thank you. She is my only family. Don't worry, we'll save her, Fang Yan said with a serious expression. Jiang Shangxin looked at Fang Yan's clear and sincere eyes at this moment and said, I've always wanted to repay you, but I don't know how to do it. Maybe you don't need anything now. But when you need something, you must think of me first. Fang Yan smiled, turned around and shouted, Fang Yingying, come out. Fang Yingying walked out from behind the dense bushes and said awkwardly, Junior Marshal Uncle, I didn't mean to eavesdrop on your conversation. You heard it by accident, right? Yes, that's right, Fang Yingying nodded his head vigorously. Fang Yan couldn't be bothered to argue with this rascal and said, send Miss Jiang to Chaoyan Research Institute, no problem. Fang Yingying nodded his head and agreed. This was the brightest moment, but it was also the most dangerous moment. Fang Yan heard that Jiang Zhuliu's mother had gone to look for Jiang Shangxin and even said some threatening words. He didn't want anything to happen to Jiang Shangxin, as it would ruin his overall plan. No one was more suitable than Jiang Shangxin to help him control the Longtu group. Even Lu Chaoga wasn't as legitimate as her. Fang Yan, the fish soup you make is very delicious, Jiang Shangxin said. I'll come and try your cooking when I have time. Just once or twice a year. Fang Yan said, I don't usually cook. Sister Lu said that you cook often. Seeing that Fang Yingying had driven Jiang Shangxin away, Fang Yan returned to the living room and saw that Lu Chaoga was washing the dishes in the kitchen. Fang Yan rolled up his sleeves and said, let me do it. A woman's hands are delicate, it won't look good if they get hurt by the detergent. Lu Chaoga rejected him and said, I'm wearing gloves, it's fine. You agreed to make a cell phone with her? Fang Yan looked at Lu Chaoga and asked. Since she wants to join us, Lu Chaoga turned to look at Fang Yan and said, why should we reject her? She is a capable woman, she can help you. Most importantly, I can tell that she really wants to help you. Otherwise, she wouldn't have offered to make a cell phone with me. You trust her? I trust you more. Lu Chaoga said, I believe that she won't betray you after you did so much for her. Which woman can bear such kindness? Fang Yan sighed softly and said, Li Yun's whereabouts are unknown. She is ultimately a threat to us. If they're using her as a card, then let's just wait for them to show their hand, Lu Chaoga said. Compared to a dead person, it's more meaningful to keep her alive. That's right, Fang Yan agreed. There are too many temptations in this world. Let's see who can last until the end. Mo Qingbi found that he was surrounded. He was surrounded together with the transparent puppy. Standing in front of them was a group of ferocious white animals. They were the rulers of this land of extreme cold, the snow wolves. Snow wolves are pack animals, they eat and sleep together, they come and go like the wind. Not to mention, no matter if their prey was one or a group, they would always fight together, a bit like humans' shameless style of fighting against a group of them or a group of them. Because of their numbers, as well as their ferocious nature, no one on this land of glaciers, no, not even animals are willing to fight against them. Mo Qingbi met them once in the White Sea, when they were tearing apart an ice bear. Their strong bodies, running speed, and ferociousness in battle left a deep impression on Mo Qingbi. Mo Qingbi used the hermit breath technique to seal his breath and buried his entire body in the deep snow to avoid a direct confrontation with them. Mo Qingbi didn't like eating wolf meat, and he didn't like being eaten by wolves even more. However, he didn't expect that after hiding in this cave, he would still be found by this group of glacier gangsters. Their target is, the transparent puppy? I can't let them eat the ice dragon, Mo Qingbi thought. Even he couldn't bear to eat it, how could he let a group of wolves eat it? With that thought in mind, Mo Qingbi took 2 steps forward. He used his huge body to block in front of the transparent puppy, and looked straight into the wolf lord's crimson eyes. Mo Qingbi's fists were clenched tightly as he pondered over the method and direction of his attack. In the middle of the pack of wolves stood an extremely tall and big snow wolf. Its white fur was longer and its eyes were redder, as if its pupils were filled with blood. Mo Qingbi thought, I'll start with it in a moment. He understood the habits of these animals, they bullied the weak and feared the strong. If he killed the Wolf Lord first, they would probably scatter in disarray. Mo Qingdi missed his spear a little. If only he could drag it along when he ran for his life during the earthquake. With a spear in hand, the world is mine. Now that he didn't have a spear, his prestige as a man was also weakened. Just as Mo Qingdi was thinking about this, the Wolf Lord's eyes were also fixed on Mo Qingdi. After glancing at Mo Qingdi, it actually moved its eyes away. Mo Qingdi was no match for it. The transparent puppy was very dissatisfied with Mo Qingdi's reaction. Its little feet stepped on the solid ice, and it trotted in front of Mo Qingdi. Mo Qingdi was afraid that the transparent puppy would have some mishap. If it was eaten by these wolves, then he wouldn't have to hesitate about whether or not to eat the transparent puppy. At that time, he wouldn't even have the chance to hesitate. Mo Qingdi had to protect the transparent puppy from harm. So, Mo Qingdi once again stood in front of the transparent puppy. This time, the transparent puppy was angry. It bared its teeth, and used its head to gently nudge Mo Qingdi's buttocks. After that, it once again rushed in front of Mo Qingdi. Because this man and dog were constantly trying to stand up for each other, they were getting closer and closer to the position of the wolf pack. Just as Mo Qingdi was wondering if standing in front of the transparent puppy again would arouse its strong resentment and prevent it from giving him food again, the transparent puppy moved. It actually took the initiative to attack the Wolf Lord in the middle of the pack. Its body leaped up, and as if there was wind under its feet, it floated in front of the Wolf Lord. The Wolf Lord's eyes became even redder. Its body crouched down, and then like a cannonball, it rushed toward the transparent puppy. The Wolf Lord's body was strong, and its size was much larger than the transparent puppy. In Mo Qingdi's eyes, the transparent puppy had no chance of winning. It opened its bloody mouth towards the transparent puppy's neck, and its sharp teeth emitted a frightening cold light. "Be careful," Mo Qingdi shouted. He didn't know what to call its name, but at this moment, the life and death of the transparent puppy made him extremely worried. It was just like how it was Fang Yan, the closest family member to him. In this glacial land, it was indeed his only family. The transparent puppy's neck was bitten by the snow wolf. No, that was just his imagination. Just as the snow wolf's slender teeth were about to pierce through the transparent puppy's neck, the transparent puppy's body unexpectedly drifted again, and in a flash, it jumped on top of the snow wolf's head. A dog stepping on the head of a wolf, such a scene, was really quite creepy. It was the Great Wolf Lord, and it was actually being stepped on by a dog. The Wolf Lord was really angry. "Woo!" It looked up to the sky and howled, as if it was going to tear its skin and drink its blood. "Woo!" The majestic howl with hidden anger turned into a painful whine, because the ice dragon had bitten off half of its head. Chapter 622. The whole body of the puppy was translucent, and its snow-white skin looked like it would crack at the slightest touch. Its eyes were so innocent, and its body was so thin and weak. It looked a little proud, and a little proud. It looked so pitiful that people couldn't help but want to protect it. It was obviously the little submissive dragon of the ice dragon world. If it was a dog, then it would be a little submissive dog. The roar at the front turned into a sad whine at the back. The huge body of the Wolf King, which was majestic and arrogant a moment ago, fell to the ground. The change in style was too fast for people to accept. Half of the Wolf King's head was in the sharp mouth of the little transparent dog. When the Wolf King fell to the ground, the dog had already floated in front of Mo Qingdi like a gust of wind. The little transparent dog spat out the Wolf King's head in disgust, and used its tongue to roll up a ball of ice and snow on the ground and put it in its mouth. After it spun a few rounds, it actually spat it out with a pu sound. It actually knew how to rinse its mouth. Mo Qingdi blushed. He couldn't brush his teeth after coming to this land of glaciers. Every day, he just grabbed a handful of ice and chewed it in his mouth. He felt that he was not as clean as the little transparent dog. Ice Dragon turned his head to look at Mo Qingdi with a smug look on his face. It spat at Mo Qingdi, as if to say, "Look how powerful I am." Mo Qingdi's mouth twitched, but no words came out. Defeating the Snow Wolf King in one round, it certainly had the right to show off. The tragic death of the Wolf King immediately made the wolves restless. They retreated in unison, staring fiercely and vigilantly at the little transparent dog in front of them. Awoo! Soon, another huge snow wolf walked to the center of the pack, letting out a long howl. Hearing its howl, the pack of snow wolves also howled. They had chosen a new Wolf King. The new Wolf King pounced and chewed off half of the head of the previous Wolf King that the little transparent dog had spat out. With a mouth full of blood, it howled again. Its hind legs were bent, and its body was bent back, as if it could pounce on the prey in front of it at any time. At the same time, the other wolves also bent their hind legs to attack. They were ready to unleash their shameless nature and carry out the wolf pack tactics that they had always won. The transparent dog bit the Wolf King to death in a single round, displaying its extraordinary combat ability. However, there were close to 100 snow wolves in the surroundings, and the little transparent dog seemed to be alone. Mo Qingdi clenched his fists and prepared to fight alongside the transparent puppy. The transparent puppy was not afraid at all. Not only did it not retreat, but it also took the initiative to take 2 steps towards the wolves. It opened its mouth and sneezed violently. Hoochie! A gust of wind blew past, but there was no so-called dragon breath. Mo Qingdi was a little disappointed. Was this really an ice dragon? The transparent puppy was obviously a little embarrassed as well. It turned around and glanced at Mo Qingdi again. It opened its mouth, and suddenly, a thunderous sound came from its throat. Awoo! The wind howled and snow flew everywhere. His voice was like a great bell, resounding through the entire glacier land. Hearing this extremely shocking voice, the Wolf King's eyes were filled with fear, and he couldn't help but take a step back. As the Wolf King retreated, the pack of wolves followed suit. Whoosh! The transparent puppy was impatient, and it took the initiative to pounce on the Wolf King. Its body stretched out like a dragon, and its movements were as fast as lightning. The transparent puppy seemed to have the ability to ride the wind, and its body kept floating in the air. However, every time it fell, it would tear a snow wolf into pieces. The transparent puppy, no, the ice dragon had activated its killing mode. The fresh blood made the snow wolves' eyes even redder, and the transparent puppy's fierceness enraged the wolves. They surrounded the little transparent dog, pouncing forward and launching death charges again and again. Mo Qingdi stood there very leisurely, and very dispirited. There was no one else in his eyes, only the ice dragon. The wolves regarded the transparent puppy as their only opponent. As for Mo Qingdi, he was only a companion after the victory. Buying 2 pounds of lean meat, they would also give you a piece of pig's offal. In the eyes of the wolves, after killing the transparent puppy, would they still be afraid that Mo Qingdi would run away? I am the Azure Dragon, the overlord of mankind. Mo Qingdi thought in his heart, feeling wronged. The battle was over very quickly. When the transparent puppy killed the new Wolf King, and tore apart the thick fur and hard flesh of dozens of snow wolves, the pack of snow wolves finally collapsed. The first snow wolf ran away, and then more and more wolves left the battle. When the last wounded snow wolf fell to the ground with half of its face bitten off by the transparent puppy, there were no more snow wolves left standing on the ground. The blood of the wolves dyed the glacial ground red, and the corpses of the wolves were scattered everywhere. The transparent puppy stood in the middle of the battlefield, with the posture of a god of slaughter. Mo Qingdi sighed softly. This was the demeanor of a divine dragon. The transparent puppy turned its head, and walked step by step to stand in front of Mo Qingdi. Mo Qingdi stared into its eyes, and suddenly felt that the transparent puppy was no longer the transparent puppy he knew when he first met it. It had grown up, and become a real dragon. Ice Dragon. The transparent puppy stood in front of Mo Qingdi, and looked at him with resentment, and then stretched out its head to rub against Mo Qingdi's thigh. Are you a dragon? Mo Qingdi shouted in his heart. You are the legendary ice dragon, a noble creature written in the records of strange creatures. Where is your pride? Where is your dignity? Mo Ching Di was confused in the wind. Blue Sky Club. In a private room that was isolated from the outside world, Fang Yen was performing the tea ceremony with smooth movements. With the rise of his status, the current Fang Yen almost didn't need to make tea himself. No matter which club he went to, there would be a professional tea master standing by his side to serve him. Today, Fang Yen was in a good mood, so he took the job from the tea master, and brewed a pot of good tea himself to share with his friends. Fang Yen brought the transparent glass teacups to Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu, and even gave the tea master next to him a cup. The elegant and beautiful tea master wearing a cheongsam looked at Fang Yen with excitement and asked, "Sir, did you just use the eye-pointing technique?" Fang Yen smiled and said, "Outside, it is called the eye-pointing technique. We call it the Phoenix 3 nods. When you point the water, doesn't it look like the phoenix nodding? Of course, it also looks like a chicken pecking rice, so some people call it the chicken eating rice. 3 points of water, and each one is very particular. The angle, the temperature, and the bearing are all indispensable. I heard that this eye-pointing technique is very difficult to master. I didn't expect to see it today." The tea master held the cup and greedily sniffed the tea, then said, "Let me offer you a cup." Then, she drank the tea in one gulp. Fang Yen smiled and took a sip of the tea, then said, "No rush, be careful, it's hot." Lan Shanggu laughed and said, "They say that this is a society that values appearance, but I don't think so. If you are talented, you can still win the affection of beautiful women, right? Hope, don't you think that young Master Fang is very powerful? He's not married yet. Do you want me to help you two get together?" The tea master blushed and said coquettishly, "Young master, don't laugh at me. Hope's beauty is ordinary. How can she be a good match for Mr. Fang? He likes tea, you also like tea, you are people of the same mind. How can you say that you are not a good match?" Lan Shanggu said teasingly, "I can see that Hope really likes our young Master Fang. Listen, she only said that her beauty is ordinary, and she is afraid that she is not a good match for Mr. Fang. If she is a good match, she is very willing to be a good match." Zhao Shiji took the initiative to pour tea for the people in front of her, then said, "You guys talk, I'll go out first." After saying that, he hurriedly ran out. Women are the best mediators. After joking around with Zhao Shiji for a while, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became relaxed and cheerful. Lan Shanggu held the teacup and carefully sipped it, then said, "Young master, I don't know much about tea, but I have drunk countless tea, but I have never drunk this kind of tea. The leaves look ordinary, but the taste of this tea is the best I have ever tasted. It is the best tea I have ever tasted." Fang Yen smiled and said, "This is ambergris. It is not famous in the outside world, but it is a first-class tea. How can such a good tea not be famous?" Lan Shanggu asked strangely. "I will find someone to collect some, and in the future, I will specially provide it to the customers of the Blue Mountain Club." Fang Yen shook his head and said, "No need." "Why?" "There are only 3 mature dragon trees in the world. One is inside the red wall, the other 2 are in the Taoist temple. Don't even think about the one inside the red wall. There are countless eyes watching it." "Not enough. As for the 2 in the Taoist temple, don't even think about it. If anyone dares to touch their dragon tree, those old Taoist priests will fight them to the death. Maybe before you even touch the dragon tree, you will be thrown into the deep valley." "It really is the best in the world," Lan Shanggu sighed and said, "Unfortunately, I don't have the luck to see it. I have never seen a dragon tree before. I only stole a little bit of ambergris tea from the Taoist priests. I thought you might not have seen it, so I brought it out for you to try. Isn't this harming people?" Lan Shanggu smiled bitterly and said, "After drinking this ambergris tea, how can other tea be tasted? If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have drunk it and just drank my big leaf tea. There is no difference if there is no comparison after all." Fang Yen smiled and said, "If you really like it, I will think of a way to get more for you." "No, no," Lan Shanggu hurriedly waved his hand. "This thing is addictive. The more I drink, the more I get addicted. If I get addicted, and young Master Fang suddenly stops giving it to me, then wouldn't my life be worse than death? That's why I don't want something that I can't handle. Young Master Fong, don't you think this makes sense? Chapter 623. Lan Shanggu wasn't talking about the tea, he was talking about the person. Or rather, he was talking about the shares of Longtu Group that old Master Lan gave him. Just like the dragon birth tea, it was a good thing, but not everyone had the fortune to enjoy it. Old Master Lan knew that Fong Yen was very powerful in watching now. If Fong Yen was determined to kick them out, it would be almost impossible for the Lan family to keep their shares of Longtu Group. So, old Master Lan did him a favor and directly transferred the shares to Lan Shanggu. Didn't you call Fong Yen your brother? Then let's see if you can keep this share. After Lan Shanggu received this share, it was like he had received a hot potato. He couldn't throw it on the ground because it would break into pieces. But, he couldn't just open his mouth and swallow it. That would burn his mouth and even hurt his lungs. The most important thing in this matter was Fong Yan's attitude. But he couldn't directly ask Fong Yan's attitude. If that was the case, wouldn't he be treating Fong Yan as a narrow-minded person? Using tea to judge people, using tea to explain things. It was a good move that was logical and logical. Hearing Lan Shanggu's words, Lu Shu couldn't help but laugh and said, Lan Shanggu, keep your wretched thoughts to yourself. Didn't you just want to ask young master if you can swallow the big piece of meat that Lan family gave you? If you have something to say, just say it. Is there a need to be so secretive? Lan Shanggu laughed and said to the willow tree, Brother Lu Shu is indeed a straightforward person, saying whatever comes to your mind. I was indeed asking to be humiliated by playing these little tricks in front of the young master. No wonder even Brother Lu Shu couldn't stand it anymore. Since Lu Shu and Lan Shanggu had spoken openly, then Fong Yen had to give a direct answer. Fong Yen looked at Lan Shanggu and asked with a smile, What are you worried about? The smile on Lan Shanggu's face froze. I'm sorry, young master, I made things complicated. I understand your character, but this is still my fault. There's nothing wrong with it, Fong Yen said with a smile. The portion that you obtained originally belonged to the Lan clan. Whether the Lan clan gives it to you or to others, that's their freedom. We are merchants, not enemies. Since they've given it to you, we're Longtu Group's business partners. It's the same as our cooperation on Chaoyan technology. What's there to be sorry about? Young master, I am worried that you will misunderstand my relationship with the Lan clan, Lan Shanggu said honestly. After all, this was a bomb. It was better to take the initiative to explain it to Fong Yen. How can blood ties be severed so easily? Do you think that you and the Lan clan are no longer related to each other in my eyes now that you and the Lan clan have separated? Fong Yen narrowed his eyes as he sized up Lan Golu. On the contrary, you will make me wary and vigilant. If you treat your own parents and family like this, how good can you be to others? Young master, the Lan clan is your home in Lan Golu. It's natural for you to have connections and cooperate with them. I won't be so heartless to the point where you have to make a choice between me and your family. Do those women who do such things have a good ending? You don't have to do something like not going home for 3 years anymore. That doesn't prove your loyalty, it only proves that you're cold-blooded and heartless. I know what you're worried about. Your worries are unnecessary. Since the Lan clan's old man has transferred that portion of the shares to your name, then you should accept it properly. I'm happy to see you accept it, and I also want to congratulate you. Young master, I was wrong, Lan Shanggu apologized sincerely. I've underestimated you. You're more forgiving than I thought. It's not my money, why should I be forgiving? Fong Yen said with a smile. Lu Shu's eyes sparkled. He looked at Lan Shanggu and said, Congratulations, you've inexplicably gained such a large sum of money. Lan Shanggu glanced at Fong Yen and said to Lu Shu, Brother Lu, are you interested in playing with young master in the energy industry? Lu Shu instantly understood what Lan Shanggu meant. He smiled and said, Of course I'm interested. Unfortunately, I don't have the chance to enter. Lan Shanggu smiled and said, I got those shares for free anyway. Why don't we split them in half? Lan Shanggu received Fang Yan's forgiveness and immediately helped him win people's hearts. Now, Fang Yan owned more than half of Longtu Group's shares and controlled the management of Longtu Group. Lan Shanggu received the Lan clan's gift and became Fang Yan's partner again. Only Lu Shu was an outsider. Longtu Group had nothing to do with Lu Shu. Lan Shanggu gave half of his shares to Lu Shu to thank Fang Yan and also to help Fang Yan rope in Lu Shu and the Lu clan behind Lu Shu. If Lu Shu accepted Lan Shanggu's proposal, then the three parties would once again be tied together by benefits. Did he have a reason to reject? I'm more than happy to accept something that doesn't require money. Even brothers should settle accounts clearly. I'll still accept the money, but I'll pay you according to the price when the Lan clan bought the shares. How about it? You've gotten a great deal, right? For the willow tree, it was indeed a great bargain. First, the Lu clan finally had the opportunity to enter the energy industry. Everyone knew the future development trend of the energy industry and the market potential of the energy industry in the future. The earlier they entered, the earlier they would have the right to speak in the future world. If it wasn't for the energy industry, the Lu clan wouldn't have made such a risky move with Lu Chaoga's aunt. How would Lu Shu fall into Fang Yan's hands and be injured to this extent? Second, he and Lan Shanggu could be more closely tied to Fang Yan's warship. Advancing and retreating together, sharing benefits. The two largest energy industries in Huaqing were Chaoyan Technology and Longtu Group. The big brother and the second brother were natural enemies. Previously, the two companies were indeed at loggerheads. But now, both Chaoyan Technology and Longtu Group had almost fallen into Fang Yan's hands. That was to say, Fang Yan had almost monopolized the energy industry in Huaqing. In this case, anyone who wanted to enter the game in the future would have to greet Fang Yan or get his approval and blessings. If these two companies could work together, then the influence they could bring would be national or even world-class. No energy company or organization could ignore their existence. At that time, Fang Yan would become the world's most famous energy king. Who wouldn't want to have a relationship with such a person? Lu Shu raised the teacup in front of him and solemnly toasted Lan Shanggu. Lan Shanggu laughed and said, "It's rare to see brother Lu Shu not being hostile toward me." At this moment, Fang Yan suddenly made a shushing gesture. Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu thought that Fang Yan had discovered something, so they hurriedly listened. There was the noise of laughter outside, the sound of wine glasses clinking, and the tinkling of a zither. The sound of the zither was clear and sharp, but intermittent. It floated beyond the ninth heaven, faintly discernible and faintly discernible. It hit your heart hard, making you feel pain. Just when you were waiting for its second attack and prepared to be attacked again, it suddenly disappeared with a whoosh. It made people feel empty in their hearts. This was an unfinished song, youth. This was a story without an ending. This was a brushing shoulder in the crowd. This was a look of deep love when you were sheltering from the rain under the eaves. It was unknown, and it was fruitless. It was regret, and it was a lament. In an instant, Fang Yan's thoughts changed. He didn't know where his spirit and soul had flown to. Fang Yan was shocked when he came to his senses. He was a martial artist, a person with a firm mind. He had the protection of the heart of Tai Chi, so the decadent music outside had no effect on him. But why did this music remind him of so many things? Why did it make him lose his mind? At that moment, if someone attacked him, he might not be able to keep his life. Fang Yan looked at Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu and found that they also had dull expressions. They were obviously immersed in their own memories of the past. Their willpower wasn't as strong as him, so it was even more difficult for them to get out of this music. This was a magical music that could confuse people's minds. When the music entered the ears, the entire world around them disappeared. When the music ended, they returned to this noisy and chaotic world. Lan Shanggu's face was full of fascination. He said, "Who played this song? It's really rare to hear it in this world. I'm not afraid to say it out loud, but just now, I suddenly remembered my first love in middle school. Although I have long forgotten her name. I thought I had long forgotten about this person. It turns out that some things have always been hidden in the bottom of my heart. Lu Shu also remembered many old memories, but his personality was gloomy now and he didn't like to talk much. I don't know who played this song, Lu Shu said. Such a wonderful person, no matter what, we should make friends with her. Lan Shanga nodded and said, I really don't know when the Blue Mountain Club recruited such a brilliant musician. Wait a moment, I'll find someone to ask. No need, Fang Yan said. Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu looked at Fang Yan curiously. Lan Shanggu asked, Master, you're not interested in her? I already know who it is. Fang Yan said, only her music can make people's souls leave their bodies and become intoxicated. I can hear the celestial music, but I can't see the celestial being. Chapter 624. Young Master Fang already knows who the immortal is before meeting her. Lan Shanggu said with a smile, since she's an old friend, then all the more reason to invite her over. Are you afraid that Lu Shu and I will steal your limelight? You don't have to worry about this. Lu Shu and I are indeed a bit more handsome than you, but as long as it's a woman that young Master Fang values, even if we admire her, we definitely won't pursue her. Of course, if that immortal accidentally takes a fancy to us and takes the initiative to launch a fierce attack on us, at that time, young Master Fang mustn't break us up because of jealousy. Fang Yan knew that Lan Shanggu was joking with him, using such a casual way to get closer to him. This was a man with a high EQ, with him joking around, it made people feel much more relaxed. If he were to sit there with the willow tree with a gloomy face, speak sarcastically, and look at people with a hidden ominous glint, perhaps Fang Yan wouldn't even be able to hold on for a minute. He would have long made up an excuse like his puppy was about to give birth to a second child and run away. Fang Yan shook his head, looked at Lan Shanggu and said, we're not old friends. I know who she is, but she doesn't know who I am. Plus, we've never met before. You can say that we're complete strangers. Lan Shanggu looked confused and asked, I'm getting more and more curious. What kind of person could make young Master Fang fall in love with her so much? I know that the women around young Master Fang are all beauties. Ordinary people can't enter your eyes. Someone who plays classical music? If there really is such a person, then it can only be that legendary figure. There's only one person in the whole of Huaxia. I'm afraid I won't have the luck to meet her in this lifetime. That person. Fang Yan said with a smile. Lan Shanggu's eyes widened and said, one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia, Le Qi? That's right. Fang Yan nodded with a smile. When I was in Beijing, I was fortunate enough to hear one of her performances. I only heard the music but didn't see her. However, it was enough to be unforgettable. He subverted my understanding of music and magnified all kinds of positive and negative emotions hidden in the bottom of my heart. It made it difficult for people to extricate themselves from the past. Some were sad, some sighed, and even more wept. My voice lingers for 3 years. When I first heard the sound of the zither, I didn't have such a strong feeling. But towards the end, I once again fell into an uncontrollable mood. I think that a musician of this level is not something that can be found easily. Only she had such an ability. Who else could it be if not her? Yes. I've also heard of an interesting story about music fanatic. Lan Shanggu said seriously, it said that when someone listened to music fanatic's live performance, they were so excited that they ran around naked. This kind of baseless thing. Fang Yan's cheeks were slightly red, and she had the urge to strangle those people who were gossiping around. It's usually a marketing event for the company behind the scenes. Entertainment companies often use this kind of method to promote their artists. I didn't expect that a fairy-like music fanatic would also use it. It seems a bit vulgar, and doesn't match the identity of music fanatic Huaxia's 7 fanatics. Who doesn't know how to market? Lan Shanggu said with a smile. Fang Yan carefully examined Lan Shanggu's expression, wanting to see if he knew what happened at the Maple Leaf Club that night. To his disappointment, he got an affirmative answer from Lan Shangu's face. He knew everything that had happened that night. He even knew that the streaker was sitting in this private room. He was deliberately teasing him with this matter. That was the resonance between the heart of Tai Chi and the music, causing the internal energy in the body to run wildly, and the clothes on the body burst. Fang Yan tried hard to explain. You don't understand. Yes. I don't understand. Lan Shangu said. Many people present didn't understand either. That's why when I heard about that incident, people said that someone was so excited after hearing the music fanatic's performance that he took off his clothes and ran naked. I couldn't correct them. After all, I wasn't there to witness that exciting scene. Fang Yan wanted to take back Lan Shangu's shares from Longtu Group. What was the point of letting him earn so much money? He was going to strangle him to death soon anyway. I didn't expect the mysterious music fanatic to appear in Huacheng, and to come to my Blue Mountain Club. Lan Shangu seemed to have guessed what Fang Yan was thinking, and quickly changed the topic. Since young Master Fang hasn't seen the music fanatic, as the owner of the club, why don't I go and greet her and invite her to our private room? No need. Fang Yan rejected. I heard that the music fanatic likes silence and doesn't usually talk to strangers. She doesn't even meet the guests when she's performing. Why should we force her? Lan Shangu gave a thumbs up to Fang Yan and said, young Master Fang Yan is also a refined scholar. No wonder your heart of Tai Chi could resonate with the music fanatic's music. I'm afraid that you won't be able to invite her even if you go. That would be embarrassing, Fang Yan said. While Fang Yan and Lan Shangu were joking, Lu Shu sat at the side and drank his tea in silence. He seemed to be listening attentively to what the two were saying, but he also seemed to be uninterested in anything. Lu Shu, one of the 4 prodigies of Huacheng, was once active in the circle of Huacheng's playboys. Ever since he was disfigured in that accident, his personality had changed drastically. He was now like an eccentric monster. That's right, someone had already given him a new nickname, Wolf Head. After 3 steeps of the ambergris, just as Fang Yan was about to get up and leave, there was a commotion outside the private room. Who was the one playing the piano just now? Come out and let me see. Come out, we'll be greatly rewarded. I hope it's a beauty. If it's an old lady, it'll ruin our mood. Fang Yan's expression was slightly angry, but he didn't say anything in the end. Although he had never met Le Qi before, because of these 2 songs and the telepathic resonance between them, he had already regarded Le Qi as a close friend in his heart. He didn't want Le Qi to encounter any injustice. The people outside were obviously here for Le Qi. They could also hear the beauty of the piano sound, so now they wanted to see who the person playing the piano was. Lan Shangu had been paying attention to Fang Yan's words and actions. Seeing Fang Yan's unhappy expression, he smiled and said, in the few years that eldest young master wasn't here, some kids appeared in Huacheng. These young people rely on the fact that their families are rich to be arrogant and domineering. They often do things that are out of line. They probably think that Mr. Le Qi's piano sound is beautiful, so they couldn't help but come and say hello to her. Fang Yan nodded and said, I hope they won't make things difficult for Le Qi. People who are dedicated to their work are worthy of admiration, especially those who are devoted to music. Don't worry, Lan Shangu said with a smile. This is my turf, I'm sure they will give me some face. As soon as Lan Shangu finished speaking, the noise outside became louder and louder. Are the people inside all dead? Open the door, we're going in. B*TCH. Are you going to open the door or not? If you don't open the door, I'm going to smash the door. Do you know what this place is? This is the Lan family's turf. I'm telling you, if you don't open the door, you'll never be able to leave the Blue Mountain Club. The voices outside traveled into the private room. Fang Yan looked at Lan Shangu with a smile. Lan Shangu's face was so gloomy that water was about to come out. He had just bragged to Fang Yan that the young people outside would more or less give him some face, and now they were yelling that they would smash the door and make it impossible for them to leave the Blue Mountain Club. He felt his old face burning with pain. He had been slapped dozens of times by the kids outside. I'll go out and take a look, Lan Shanggu said in a low voice. Fang Yan nodded and said, I'm going home to sleep as well. Let's go out and see what's going on. Since Fang Yan said to go, Lu Shu naturally followed. They walked out of the private room, passed through an alley, and saw a group of young people in luxurious clothes standing in a small courtyard. There were both men and women, and they all looked very young. Because they had too much to drink, their standing posture was crooked. There was even a young couple who leaned against a pillar and kissed as if there was no one else around. At the door of a room, there were a few young people holding wine bottles. They were cursing and swearing, saying some unbearable things. There were also two young people who were a little impatient and directly ran over to knock on the wooden door of the private room. If they couldn't open the door, they kicked it with their feet. The sound of banging was endless. The wooden door creaked. If it wasn't for the fact that the wooden door was sturdy, it would have been broken by these people. A bunch of scum, Fang Yan said coldly. Seeing that Fang Yan was angry, Lan Shanggu's heart sank. He strode towards the scene of the accident and shouted, all of you stop. Lan Shanggu was tall and had a strong aura. His voice was like thunder, giving people a great deterrent. There was a moment of silence. However, when those young people saw that Lan Shanggu was just a big guy they weren't familiar with, they started laughing again. Damn, who is that big guy? Where did this mad dog come from? How is this a mad dog? It's clearly a big black bear, ha ha ha, I know him, he's the idiot who proposed to split from the Lan family. Lan Tingyue, your idiot big brother is here. Lan Tingyue stood at the door, staring fiercely at Lan Shanggu who was walking towards him. Chapter 625. The old hatred had yet to be resolved, and now there was a new one. Lan Tingyue hated Lan Mountain Valley. This hatred stemmed from the excellence of Lan Mountain Valley in the past and the jealousy in his bones. However, he didn't expect that 3 years ago, he would make a mistake and cause his own death. If he hadn't left the Lan clan, which young master in Flower City would dare to look down on him? Just because of a few words in front of the house, Lan Tingyue's newly bought Lamborghini was hit by a Hummer and turned into scrap metal. They didn't even need to drag it to a 4S shop to be repaired, because the repair money was enough to buy a new, better car. If there was a chance, Lan Tingyue wished he could put a gunny sack on Lan Guda's head, beat him up, and throw him into the Pearl River. However, he knew that the possibility of this happening was too low, because the Lan Mountain Valley was too ferocious. If he really fought with Lan Shanggu, it was more likely that Lan Shanggu would put a gunny sack on his head and beat him up before throwing him into the Pearl River. Although Lan Tingyue didn't like Lan Gulu, he liked the Blue Mountain Club established by Lan Gulu. It gave him a sense of security. He could proudly tell others that this was the Lan family's territory. Of course, the staff of the Blue Mountain Club did treat him like a master. Today, when Lan Tingyue was drinking with his friends in the outfield, he suddenly heard a very strange sound of the zither. They didn't know what was going on. After hearing the sound of the zither, all the friends present felt uncomfortable. However, even when they were in a bad mood, they still hoped that the music would not stop. While they were hurt and looking forward to it, the sound of the zither slowly disappeared. Their hearts were filled with regret. How could these young people understand the beauty of regret? Lan Tingyue immediately summoned a club member who was familiar with him and asked him where the sound of the piano came from. The club member would not hide anything from the cousin of the big boss. Therefore, Lan Tingyue took this group of second-generation masters of Zihua City to find the person who played the zither. He called the door, but it didn't open. Just when he was about to show his hooligan style, Lan Shanggu appeared like a ghost again. Murphy's Law said that whatever you were afraid of would happen. Lan Tingyue felt that it was necessary for him to have a good talk with the guy named Murphy. Lan Shanggu walked in front of Lan Tingyue and stood still, staring into his eyes coldly. Lan Tingyue was a little guilty, but he was more angry. He felt that Lan Shanggu was humiliating him. He was using his aura to oppress him. Lan Shanggu did not speak, neither did Lan Tingyue. Lan Tingyue stubbornly looked at Lan Shanggu. He wanted to use practical actions to prove to Lan Shanggu and the surrounding companions, Lan Tingyue, am also a man of iron blood. Let's go back. Lan Shanggu said. Lan Tingyue straightened his neck and said, why? Because I want you to go back, said Lan Shanggu. I'm not going back. Lan Tingyue sneered. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to control me? My dad doesn't even care about me. Who do you think you are? You have already left the Lan clan. You are nothing after leaving the Lan clan. What are you looking at? Do you have the ability to hit me? Pa! Lan Shanggu slapped him. This slap was extremely sudden, fast and ruthless. Lan Tingyue couldn't react in time, and the right side of his face was hit. His feet kept retreating, and if it weren't for someone behind him, he would have fallen to the ground. Lan Tingyue covered his face and wanted to curse back, but Lan Shanggu had already rushed over and kicked him. Clang! Lan Shanggu's stomach was kicked. His body couldn't support it anymore, and he rolled to the ground with a companion who was behind him. Their bodies collided. Lan Tingyue's head hit the hard stone steps. His forehead broke a piece of flesh, and blood seeped out. The companion behind him was even worse off. Half of his waist was hit by the stone steps, and he felt like his body was going to break in half. Lan Tingyue only felt dizzy, and his eyes stared at Lan Shanggu timidly, afraid that he would go crazy and charge at him again. You dare to hurt people for no reason? A middle-aged man with amber tortoiseshell glasses on his nose stared at Lan Shanggu with unfriendly eyes. Tortoiseshell was highly toxic and couldn't be eaten, but it could be used as medicine. Its effect of clearing heat and detoxifying was comparable to that of rhinoceros horn. It was an expensive traditional Chinese medicine that had the miraculous effect of clearing heat, detoxifying poison, calming convulsions, and lowering blood pressure. Tortoiseshell glasses could relieve eye fatigue, and keep one's brain cool and clear at all times. Of course, these glasses were also extremely expensive and hard to find. The middle-aged man pointed at Lan Tingyue and said, "This is my brother. No one has ever dared to hurt my brother." Lan Shanggu squinted his eyes and sized up the middle-aged man, and said, "You don't look familiar, are you from outside?" Magic City's Qinjingwa. Qinjingwa? Lan Shanggu thought about it seriously. He actually knew such a person. He said, "Tiandu Real Estate's Qin family? Who is Qin Shuer to you?" "That's right. Qin Shuer is my father." "So you're the son of Magic City's real estate tycoon. No wonder you dare to come to our watching to stand up for others." Lan Shanggu laughed and said, "I did hit him. What can you do to me?" "Lan Shanggu, I know you. You used to be one of Huaqing's 4 prodigies, and you swaggered around for a while. Later on, Huaqing's 4 prodigies became Huaqing's 4 unlucky. That Lu Shu was disfigured, and he wore a wolf mask all day like a beast. He was neither human nor ghost, and lived worse than a dog. And that Jiang Zhulu was an idiot. Not only was his reputation ruined by the police, but he was also accused of poisoning his own father, and your Lan Shanggu, you become the laughing stock of the entire circle. You didn't hold on to such a big tree like the Lan family, and actually made such a stupid decision to split from the family. What happened in the end? From then on, he disappeared from the upper-class circle of Huaqing. The spokesperson of the Lan family also became Lan Shonua, except for the elusive Mei Yi. The once dazzling 4 prodigies of Huaqing were either disfigured, imprisoned, or in decline. Lan Shanggu, if I were you, I'd have killed myself long ago. How could you still have the face to appear in front of others? That's right, I've never seen such an idiot. Lan Shanggu, who's your new master? When are you going to let him come out for everyone to see? Lan Shanggu, I heard that you're crying to go back now. I'm afraid the Lan family won't want you anymore, right? So he's that big idiot. My brother often talks about him. He's such an idiot. It had to be said that Qin Jingwa, who came from Charm City, was very familiar with the history of Huaqing's 4 prodigies. After his analysis, the onlookers all expressed that the 4 prodigies of Huaqing didn't have a happy ending. Especially Fang Yan, who was standing not far away. His face was even redder, as if he was drunk. Whether it was the disfigured Lu Shu or the imprisoned Jiang Zhulu, they were all closely related to him. Moreover, Lu Shu was sitting right next to him. Now that his disfigurement was exposed, how were they going to be close friends in the future? No, it should be said that he was the culprit of the tragedy. Although in teacher Fang Huo's heart, he only did what every good person would do, punish the bad people on behalf of the moon. Even Lan Shanggu, who hadn't appeared in public for 3 years, couldn't get away from him. Fang Yan's 3 years of mourning were the most difficult 3 years for Chaoyan technology. It was also the most painful 3 years for Lan Shanggu. Lan Shanggu and Jiang Zhulu were partners of Chaoyan technology, and Lu Shu was backed by the Lu family. No matter whether his choice was right or wrong, he had the power of the Lu family to rely on. No one could really do anything to him. Lan Shanggu was an unlucky guy. He had just separated from the Lan family because of Fang Yan, and then something happened to Fang Yixing. Fang Yan disappeared for 3 years. At that time, all kinds of hostile forces appeared, and even the mockery within the Lan family gradually rose. In a situation where the situation was not in his favor, Lan Shanggu could only hide his head and live, lest he became a target of others. 3 years could change a lot of people and things. Many people thought that Lan Shanggu's disappearance was because he stood on the wrong side, and that he was abandoned by the Lan family. But they didn't know how much benefit Lan Shanggu had gained from standing on the wrong side. It was also because of Lan Shanggu's 3 years of silence that the young people who had just emerged in Huaqing didn't really care about him. Even some of the young people who couldn't be compared to the 4 prodigies in the past began to order him around in front of him, very arrogant. Chen Jinghua came from Shanghai, and his background was extraordinary. He and Lan Tingyue got to know each other overseas, and after he came back, they visited each other more frequently. Lan Tingyue was embarrassed to say that he was hit by Lan Shanggu's car in order to save face, but he was beaten up by his cousin in front of so many friends. This was really embarrassing. Chen Jinghua wanted to stand up for his brother, so he naturally had to step on Lan Shanggu. After hearing Chen Jinghua's words, Lan Shanggu laughed out loud. He pointed at the willow tree on the wheelchair in the shadow and said, "That person is the one you said is neither human nor ghost, one of the 4 unlucky spirits of Flower City, Willow Tree." Lu Shu snorted coldly, very dissatisfied with Lan Shanggu's introduction. However, he stared at Chen Jinghua fiercely, like an animal that had been completely provoked. He could despise and even insult himself, but he wouldn't allow others to despise and insult him. Lan Shanggu pointed at Fang Yan, who was standing beside Lu Shu, and said, "That person, his name is Fang Yan. In the past, you didn't know his name, but it's okay, he was originally a very low-key person. But from tonight onwards, the entire Huaqing will know of his existence." Lan Shanggu's smile was sinister, and his voice was cold as he said, "Remember, his name is Fang Yan. I'm Lan Shanggu, that cripple is Lu Shu. Tonight, we'll do something exciting for everyone." Chapter 626. Something hot-blooded and exciting? What hot-blooded and exciting? When they heard Lan Shanggu say that he, Fang Yan, and Lu Shu were going to do something hot-blooded and exciting tonight, everyone had a bad feeling. Lan Shanggu's expression was so flamboyant, even a little arrogant. This was very different from his previous low-profile and forbearing personality. His tone was so calm and natural, with a sense of pride and confidence that he was in control of the whole situation. Until now, some people remembered that the Blue Mountain Club was under Lan Shanggu's name. He was the leader of this land, the king of everyone. If he wanted to make people unhappy, it wasn't a difficult thing to do. Lu Shu had been sitting there with an indifferent expression all this while. Even when others scolded him for being a disfigured monster wearing a wolf mask, or even a beast that was neither human nor ghost and lived worse than a dog, other than his pupils constricting slightly and the red blood vessels in the whites of his eyes becoming redder, he did not show any extreme reaction. He was like a bystander, a witness. Everything that happened today had nothing to do with him. But now, Lu Shu had the desire to speak. Lan Shanggu. His voice still carried a strong sense of mockery, as if he didn't like anyone or anything. He's not willing to be lonely. He wants to prove to Flower City that he's back, that he's the final victor. This person's personality has always been so radical. Fang Yan's sharp eyes looked at Lan Shanggu, who was standing in the middle of the crowd, but the smile on his face was somewhat calm. He didn't seem to care about what Lan Shanggu was about to do, and he didn't care about the results. Originally, I thought that we could wait a little longer, at least until the Longtu group becomes a hole in our hands, until we put all the meat on our plates, until we eat the roasted duck into our stomachs. Fang Yan replied softly, but, since Lan Shanggu feels that today is the best time, and this is the best place, then let him stand up and make a declaration. Let him tell everyone in Flower City that we're back. It was also to let those enemies, detractors, belittling people, and neutral onlookers understand this matter. We are the final victors, and we will soon rule over Flower City. Lu Shu looked at the side of Fang Yan's face in astonishment. This was a gentle man, a refined man, a man who would not say such arrogant words as "I am the only one in the world," even when he was using violence. He had never heard Fang Yan say something like that, saying that they were the final victors and that they were going to dominate Flower City. Needless to say, this kind of feeling was really quite exciting. Do you think it's strange? Fang Yan asked with a smile. There were a few accidents, the willow tree said. This has always been your goal, it was an inn on your way. You have been working hard towards this goal, but you have never said that you didn't want to become the ruler of this city. Fang Yan grinned and said, I've never thought about becoming the ruler of this Flower City. What I've obtained today isn't the goal I've been working so hard for. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me for saying this. When I returned to Swallow Dock 3 years ago, I even wanted to go back to Flower City after the new year and quit my job as a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary. I wanted to go back and be with a very barbaric but also very beautiful girl. In the morning, I accompanied her to practice martial arts on the Green Mountain 1-foot platform. In the evening, I accompanied her to watch the sunset by Stone River. At night, I took her for a walk in the alleys of the village. I fed the cats and dogs. Whenever I had the chance, I would secretly touch her little hand. She dedicated her life to martial arts, so I wanted to dedicate my life to her and martial arts. I wanted to see what the human limit was, and how far the heart of Taiji could go. I wanted to cure Grandpa's leg, I wanted to avenge the old drunkard. Fang Yan turned to look at the willow tree and said, Look, which one of these things isn't important? Which one of them isn't more important than becoming the ruler of this Flower City? It's too important, 100 times more important than me standing here today. However, God wasn't satisfied. He felt that this game was too monotonous and boring, so he kept adding plot twists and turns. In the end, he turned me into such a... Fang Yan hesitated for a while, then finally used a more appropriate word to describe himself, a yuppie, if given a choice, who would be willing to compete with others in shamelessness and shamelessness. Fang Yan looked at the willow tree and asked, Did you remember everything I said? I did, the willow tree nodded and said. Very good. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, saying, If you have the chance to see Yiro, you must tell her what I said. The power of words of love spoken in person and words of love from someone else's mouth are very different. The willow tree sighed softly and said, I suddenly regret one thing. What is it? If I heard what you said earlier, if I knew you were such a person. The willow tree reached out to touch the wolf mask on his face and said, Why would I want to be your enemy? Why would I want to be your enemy? Bad person, yes, I was indeed a bad person at the time. But bad people also need friends. This is fate, Fang Yan said. Then my life is really bitter, the willow tree sighed. Ever since he met Fang Yan, his life went from the lowest point to the highest point, but did he gain more or lose more? This kind of question would swallow his heart every sleepless night. Lan Shanggu clapped his hands, and a group of tall men dressed in black surged into this independent courtyard. They skillfully blocked the 4 arches of the courtyard. Without Lan Shanggu's permission, no one could go out. There was a commotion at the scene, many people were worried that these men in black would attack them. Someone took out a phone from his pocket, preparing to call the outside world for help. A man in black ran in front of Lan Shanggu and asked in a low voice, "Young master, do you want to put away your phone?" Lan Shanggu sneered and said, "No need. Let them come." Even Lan Tingyue, whose head was bruised, crawled up from the ground, found his phone and began to call for help. In his eyes, the current Lan Shanggu had become a complete lunatic. Chen Guijing didn't call for help. If he did so, it would be showing weakness to Lan Shanggu. Someone like him, how could he show weakness like others? Chen Guijing laughed loudly, looked at Lan Shanggu and said, "Lan Shanggu, why did you seal this place? You don't want us to go out? If you really dare to make us stay, I'm willing to be an unwelcome guest here. This place has good food, good girls, good scenery. I really don't want to leave so quickly." Chen Guijing turned to look at the young masters who were making calls and said, "What? Are you afraid that young Master Lan will starve everyone to death? Don't worry, our young Master Lan is a famous person in Huacheng. He won't do things like murder or arson. If one or two of us really die, he won't be able to get away with it, right? Why don't you open your eyes and take a look? Where are we standing right now? This is the Blue Mountain Club. This is young Master Lan's place. If he doesn't take responsibility, who will?" After listening to Chen Guijing's words, everyone thought that it made sense. Even if this was Lan Shanggu's place, he could do whatever he wanted. Could he kill or starve his brothers to death? Thinking of this, they were like balloons that had been filled with air, and suddenly became aggressive again. "That's right. Lan Shanggu, what do you want to do to us? Do you want to scold us or kill us with your eyes? Lan Shanggu, I'm warning you, based on what you did tonight, we can charge you with imprisonment and restriction of personal freedom. Lan Shanggu, I've already called the police. If you're smart, hurry up and apologize to us. If we're in a good mood, maybe we won't stoop to your level." Lan Shanggu turned to look at Fang Yan, chuckled and said, "Do you know why I can't wait to do this? These bastards just don't remember the pain. They're born to be despicable. If you talk to them nicely, they'll think that you're easy to bully, that you don't have a strong background, that I'd be letting you down if I don't bully you. So you came to please me, only by beating them up so that they remember that we beat them up, that every bone in their body hurts when they see us. Then they'll talk to us nicely and maintain the respect they deserve." Chen Guijing's face was full of mockery as he said, "Lan Shanggu, I'm standing here today, I don't believe. What can you do to me tonight? Lan Shanggu, I'm in Xinyang, I'm standing here today, I don't believe that you dare to beat me up. Lan Shanggu, I'm Li Xiaohua, my father is Li Xinhui. If you don't beat me up today, you're my grandson." "Pfft, I don't want a grandson like you." More and more people stood up. They were all young people, and they all thought they were respectable young people. They were surrounded by Lan Shanggu, bullied by Lan Shanggu, and this stimulated their arrogance and courage. They were prepared to fight to the death with Lan Shanggu. Lan Shanggu didn't disappoint them. He waved his hand, smiled and said, "Don't beat them to death." Thus, the surrounding men in black held wooden sticks in their hands and started to beat the heads of the young masters in the courtyard. Chapter 627. Lan Shanggu said "don't kill," which meant that he was willing to bear all the consequences other than killing people. Since they got the authorization from the big boss, how could the tall and strong men in black not use all their strength? They waved their big sticks and hit the faces and bodies of the rich second-generation young masters. "You dare to hit me? Do you believe that I won't find a few hundred brothers to kill you? Ouch, help, I'm beating people to death. My dad is Li Mingliang, he is Huacheng. Brother, name a price, I'll give you money, I'll give you a lot of money." At first, those young masters were still stubborn and wanted to pretend to be heroes in front of these small fries that they didn't even look at before. They thought that Lan Shanggu was just saying tough words and didn't dare to really beat them up. When they were whipped by the wooden sticks, when their foreheads were cut, their cheeks were swollen, and some of their bones were broken, when the unbearable pain struck them again and again, they finally realized a serious problem. Rangoon Valley had gone mad. This kid really dared to deal a killing blow to them. Pa pa pa, the sound of the wooden sticks hitting the human body. Ah, the screams of the young masters and socialites. Whether it was the young master of the Zhang family or the young lady of the Li family, whether it was a man or a woman, as long as it was those guys who wanted to smash the door, they were attacked indiscriminately by the men in black. Of course, the women still had some advantages. Even those tough men with hearts of stone, they used a lot of strength when they beat these young masters, but when facing those beautiful young ladies in cheongsams or dresses, they still couldn't do it. Some of them were almost instigated by the pitiful eyes of those young ladies. Lan Tingyue was the person who understood Lan Shanggu the most. When he heard Lan Shanggu say, "Don't kill," he felt a sense of trepidation. That lunatic dared to drive a Hummer to run over his sports car in front of his house and almost killed him. Blue Mountain Club was his territory, what else did he not dare to do? He didn't believe that this guy would suddenly become soft-hearted or timid. So, the first thing he did was to lie on the ground and pretend to be dead. In the end, when chaos broke out, many people thought that he was really dead. The fleeing boys stepped on his back, and the high-heeled shoes of the ladies almost nailed a hole in his head. Fortunately, he noticed it and dodged in time. Even so, he was still covered in wounds, lying there motionless, as if he was really going to die. When a bald man swung a wooden stick at his head, Chen Guojing knew that Lan Shanggu was playing with them for real. This bastard, this idiotic brute, this. Before Chen Guojing could finish cursing, he was slapped hard in the face. Chen Guojing felt dizzy and his cheeks were burning with pain. He could no longer feel whether his face was still there. However, Chen Guojing was unwilling to admit defeat just like that. He was a high and mighty young master. Lan Shanggu, who had lost the support of the Lan family, was just a lowly little bumpkin. They were not qualified to talk to him on equal footing. Lan Shanggu, how dare you hit me? Chen Guojing covered his face, turned around, and finally found where Lan Shanggu was standing. His eyes stared fiercely at his target, and said fiercely, "Lan Shanggu, prepare to pay the price in blood. I want you to die, I want you to die without a burial place." Smack. The bald man once again raised his rod and ruthlessly smashed it on Chen Guojing's head. Crack, the wooden stick broke into two, and Chen Guojing's forehead was overflowing with dark red blood. When the blood flowed to the corner of his mouth, Chen Guojing finally couldn't stand anymore, and his body fell heavily on the lawn of the courtyard. After Chen Guojing fell, the group of arrogant and despotic young masters and young ladies no longer had anyone who could stand up. Lan Shanggu waved his hand, and the group of men in black scattered in all directions with their wooden sticks. Once again, they silently guarded the four arched exits of the small courtyard. "My head is bleeding, I'm going to die, send me to the hospital, Mom, they hit me, I want to go home, I want to go home, ouch, my leg is broken," wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves, miserable and miserable. Lan Shanggu passed through the group of people lying on the ground, and stopped where Chen Guojing fell. He squatted down and looked at Chen Guojing, whose head was bleeding and body was twitching, and smiled. "Young Master Chen, how do you feel now?" Lan Shanggu, Chen Guojing's voice was trembling, and he used his hands to grab the weeds on the ground, as if it was Lan Shanggu, and he was kneading them into grass juice. "No need to threaten me." Lan Shanggu patted his shoulder, and smiled. "You've already been beaten like this. If you threaten me again, and I happen to be a narrow-minded man, what if I can't help but beat you up again? Do you understand something now?" Lan Shanggu smiled and asked. Chen Guojing clenched his teeth and didn't answer. He understood that Lan Shanggu was a mad dog. "You already have the answer in your heart, don't you?" Lan Shanggu straightened his body and stood up. He looked at the young masters and young mistresses lying on the grass, and said arrogantly, "You understand that Lan Shanggu isn't that easy to bully. Is that so? You just don't want to admit it. Do you think that I have nothing after losing the Lan clan's protection? Do you think that I will die for sure after offending the Jiang clan? Do you think that I, Lan Shanggu, am just a sick house cat that you can bully? I'm sorry, I've disappointed you. After leaving the Lan clan, I'm still living very well. I don't need the Lan clan's protection. On the contrary, I'm helping the Lan clan. I did offend the Jiang clan, but the Jiang clan couldn't suppress me. I, Lan Shanggu, am still standing here with my back straight. I'm not a house cat, not a sick dog. Whose house cat dares to beat you like this? Whose sick dog would do such a thing for the sake of the people? Lu Shu looked at Lan Shanggu, who was giving a speech in the middle of the crowd, curled his lips, and said sarcastically, "This kind of flattering method is really shameless." Fang Yan laughed as he watched, as if he didn't hear what Lu Shu said. "You're all hurt, right? Have you all learned your lesson? From this moment on, you all know who you can't offend in Flower City?" Lan Shanggu looked at where Fang Yan was standing and said, "My speech is over, now I will formally introduce a distinguished guest." Fang Yan waved his hand and said, "I'll pass. I'm not used to such a grand occasion." Lan Shanggu laughed loudly and said, "Look, our eldest young master doesn't even have the interest to talk to you. Only I, Lan Shanggu, am willing to put down my pride and stand up to teach you a lesson." Lan Shanggu walked to the wooden door that had been tightly shut, and warmly shouted to the people inside, "Flower City, Lan Shanggu, is Senior Luqi inside?" Creak, the wooden door opened a little, and a green-clothed child peeked his head inside. Seeing Lan Shanggu at the door, he doubtfully asked, "You saved us?" "That's really embarrassing," Lan Shanggu said with a guilty expression. Lan Shanggu said guiltily, "The Blue Mountain Club is my business. It's an honor for Senior Luqi to come here, but I didn't expect that these gangsters would affect Mr. Luqi's mood. I'm willing to die 10,000 times." The green-clothed child waved his hand and said, "Master said that ignorance is not a crime, and you didn't do it on purpose." Lan Shanggu felt that this green-clothed child was very cute when he spoke like an adult, so he cupped his hands and smiled. "Young master, can you please inform your master that Mr. Luqi, just say that Lan Shanggu of Flower City wants to visit her and apologize to her in person." Creak, the wooden door was closed. Lan Shanggu rubbed his nose and bitterly smiled. "Isn't this a bit too violent? You could just say that master is already asleep." Creak, the wooden door opened again. The child stood at the door and asked in a clear voice, "Is there a person named Fang Yan here?" Fang Yan was stunned, thinking, "How did Mr. Luqi know my name?" He thought about it and realized that he had never had any direct contact with Mr. Luqi. The only time he had contact with Mr. Luqi was in an awkward situation where he ran naked. Of course, even after paying so much money, he still didn't have the chance to see Mr. Luqi. Why did this little boy ask for his name today? Lan Shanggu was also stunned. He thought that Fang Yan's words were too insincere. He just said in front of them that they had never met and that he only admired her. Now that Luqi's disciple asked if he was here, it proved that they had been in contact for a long time. Lu Shu was suspicious, so he also had the same thought. Why did Fang Yan deny his relationship with Luqi in front of him and Lan Shanggu? If they were already familiar with each other, why did he say that they had never met? What kind of truth was he trying to hide? Could it be that Luqi and Fang Yan were lovers? "Hey, I'm asking you a question." Seeing that no one answered, the child couldn't help but shout, "Is Fang Yan here?" Lan Shanggu turned to look at Fang Yan, and Fang Yan nodded to him. Lan Shanggu looked at the child and said with a smile, "Fang Yan is here. May I know why you are looking for Fang Yan? Invite him in." Seeing that Lan Shanggu and Fang Yan were exchanging glances, the child's eyes had already shifted to Fang Yan. His small body bowed 90 degrees to Fang Yan and said, "Master wants to see him." Lan Shanggu's mouth was full of bitterness. He wanted to see him but couldn't, but Mr. Luqi took the initiative to invite Fang Yan. Was he destined to be a supporting character? Fang Yan hesitated for a while, then took the initiative to walk toward Luqi's room. The green-robed child stepped aside and said, "Mr. Fang Yan, please." "Thank you." Fang Yan thanked the green-robed child. Lan Shanggu also wanted to follow behind Fang Yan to take a look at Luqi. In the end, the green-robed boy blocked him with his leg. Chapter 628. There were too many rumors about the music addict, so many that she became a legend in countless people's hearts. Or rather, a legend. Some said that a world-famous musician shaved his head and became a monk after listening to the Music Addict's performance. He said that there was no other music in the world with the Music Addict. Some said that a cancer patient miraculously recovered after listening to the Music Addict's music. She didn't take medicine or chemotherapy and lived until she was 101 years old. Some said that the blind opened their eyes when they heard it and the deaf were moved to tears. Some said that someone took off his clothes and ran naked in front of countless people after listening to the Music Addict's performance. Otherwise, it would be difficult to express his feelings at that time. Oh, the hero of this rumor was Mr. Feng Huohua. Feng Yan knew about the Music Addict for a long time, but he never had the chance to meet her. The Music Addict was not very willing to meet people, and there were very few people who could meet her. This was also the reason why Feng Huohua was a little excited when he heard that he could meet Music Addict and her friends at night when he returned to the capital. Who didn't want to have intimate contact with their idol? It had been 3 years since they parted at the Maple Leaf Club. The Music Addict's music skills should have improved, right? Feng Yan thought. Feng Yan thanked the green-robed boy and walked past him. He heard the sound of the door closing behind him, but he didn't look back. This was an antique room. Most of the furniture and walls were made of various kinds of wood. It was simple but not simple. Every decoration was unique. Every one of them had a great background and was worth a fortune. He couldn't see her, but he could smell the fragrance of flowers. Yes, it was the fragrance of flowers. There were roses, lilies, peonies, lilacs, hyacinths, and some unknown flowers. The room was filled with pots of flowers. The flowers were blooming, and their fragrance assailed the nostrils. It made people feel like they had entered a flourishing garden. The room was very big, and it was divided into 2 rooms. One was the outer hall, which was used to entertain guests. The other was the inner room, which was used for guests to rest. A screen that imitated the along the river during the Qingming festival painting separated the inner and outer rooms. Feng Yan stood outside and looked into the inner room. He did not know if he should walk in directly, or if he should ask first. Just as Feng Yan was hesitating, a low flute sound came from inside the room. They were like goose feathers, like flying cotton, like fine threads, like clouds and mist, and they were so thin that they were almost inaudible. If Feng Yan wasn't so close, he might not even have heard the sound. Feng Yan's mind was instantly attracted by the sound of the flute. He released all of his mind and grabbed towards the sound of the flute. He wanted to get closer to it, he wanted to hear it more clearly. The harder it was to possess, the more he would miss it. The sound of the flute was like a woman, a charming woman that made people toss and turn restlessly. The sound of the flute gradually died down. Feng Yan's heart felt empty. He really wanted to ask if there was more, or curse out loud, F***ck, it just started and it's already over. Can't you let me enjoy it? However, he resisted the urge and waited quietly. He believed that this was not the end, but only the beginning. Sure enough, Feng Yan's guess was not wrong. Suddenly, the sound of the flute suddenly soared into the sky. It was sharp, loud, and resounded through the night sky. This time, not only Feng Yan could hear it, but the people at the door could also hear it. The people in the courtyard could also hear it. Those who were drinking could hear it, and those who were flirting could also hear it, as if the entire flower city could hear it. Feng Yan turned pale with fright. What kind of music had such a strong penetrating power and vitality? He knew that this sound couldn't be heard by the entire city, but the soaring momentum it displayed made people feel that nothing could stop it. Time, space, distance, and any other factors. Between heaven and earth, there was only the sound of the flute. Different from the previous 2 performances, the rhythm this time was very cheerful and joyful. It was like a girl in love, like a young man who lost his virginity, like an uncle who won a prize, like an old man who held the hand of Widow Wang at the head of the village. Everyone listened with joy, and everyone couldn't help but smile. The corner of Lu Shu's mouth that was hidden behind the wolf head mask slightly raised. Lan Shanggu laughed without a care in the world. Lan Tingyue, who had just been beaten, grinned. When he smiled, the wound at the corner of his mouth was pulled. Chen Guojing, who fell to the ground, also squinted his eyes and smiled. The blood on his forehead kept flowing, but his smile became more and more brilliant. Others were also laughing. Those men in black who had beaten people were laughing, and those young masters and ladies who had been beaten were also laughing. Everyone had thousands of reasons to be happy. Their bodies floated in the clouds, as if there was nothing in the world that should be worth worrying about. Fang Yan was also laughing. As he laughed, a horrified expression appeared on his face. He had discovered something very embarrassing and dangerous. His heart of Tai Chi once again spun for no reason. There was no danger, and no consciousness. It just followed the rhythm of the music, like a wild horse that had run away from its reins. The sound of the flute became louder and louder, and the mood became more and more joyful. However, the heart of Tai Chi also spun more and more crazily. Fang Yan had a very bad feeling. He knew that according to this trend, he was afraid that the heart of Tai Chi would enter a state of out of control again. His dantian had begun to burn, and his body had become hot. It could be foreseen that the scene of running naked again was about to happen. It stopped at the happiest point, and stopped at the highest point. When the sound of the flute brought everyone's mood to the highest point, it suddenly stopped when everyone was laughing the most happily. The sound of the flute disappeared. There was no warning, and there was no gradual cycle. It could come and go as it pleased. It was like a capricious and mysterious girl. Someone outside cursed loudly. Fang Yan couldn't help but want to rush up and hug Lu Qi and kiss her. Thank the heavens, Lu Qi stopped in time. If she didn't stop at the crucial drum beat, Fang Yan would have exploded again. Fang Yan knew that Lu Qi stopped because of him. Our hearts are connected, and we can't control our emotions. A woman's elegant voice came from behind the screen. Fang Yan, I have been looking for you for 3 years. It ended just like that? Lan Shanggu said with a sense of loss. He loved tea and wine, but he wasn't usually interested in music. However, after listening to Lu Qi's performance, he realized that music was such a wonderful thing. It could move your emotions and temporarily separate your body and soul. It could bring your soul to travel beyond the heavens, and soar in this boundless world. But why did it end just like that? Lu Shu frowned. He was obviously very dissatisfied with Lu Qi's unfinished behavior. Lan Shanggu sighed softly and said, one of Huaxia's 7 addicts, Lu Qi, came to Huacheng, to the Blue Mountain Club, to the Lan Valley. I actually didn't have the chance to meet her. If this gets out, how can I go out and meet people? Tell me, should I knock down that kid guarding the door and force my way in to take a look? I've already said those shameless words just now, but aren't you still alive and kicking without losing a pound or 2? The willow tree said with a face full of ridicule. Lan Shanggu touched his nose awkwardly and said, Brother Lu, I'm sorry. You also know that the Lan clan didn't handle things properly last time. This time, the old man in the clan pushed me to take the blame. Although young master didn't say anything, he was still a little unhappy. He has given me a huge benefit, so I have to give him some face. Isn't it what I should do to say good things about him in front of these useless people? How about next time you set up the stage, I'll do it for you, and you can also praise young Master Fang in front of everyone. I can't do such a shameless thing. Lu Shu said disdainfully. Hey, I say, old Lu, we're in the same boat now. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? Say whatever you want to say, do whatever you want to do. What's wrong with saying a few words of flattery? Compared to the money we're making every day, it's nothing. Besides, what do you need to be shameless? Do you still have that thing? Lan Shanggu, Lu Shu roared. All right, don't get angry at me. Lan Shanggu laughed and said. Even if I get angry, you can't kill me, right? Tell me, what is young master doing with that woman inside? Lu Shu snorted and didn't want to answer Lan Shanggu's childish question. However, he was also very curious. What was Fang Yan doing with that woman inside? At this moment, a middle-aged man hurriedly walked in. He walked to Lan Shanggu's side and said in a low voice, "Young master, the families of these people are here. They want us to hand them over." "Are they very excited?" Lan Shanggu asked with a smile. "Yes." The middle-aged man nodded and said, "Very emotional. Many people brought bodyguards and said that if we don't hand them over, they're going to take them by force." "Oh." Lan Shanggu nodded and said, "Let them wait." Young master Shonhua is also here," the middle-aged man said. Lan Shanggu squinted his eyes and smiled and said, "Let him wait too." Big brother, a young man wearing glasses stood at the door of an arched door and smiled as he greeted Lan Shanggu and said, "Big brother, did Tingyue make you angry again?" Lan Shanggu waved his hand and signaled the bodyguards to let Lan Shonhua in. Lan Shonhua walked in front of Lan Shanggu and said, "Tingyue is young and doesn't know anything. Big brother, don't lower yourself to his level." Hearing Lan Shonhua's voice, Lan Tingyue finally had the courage to raise his head and shouted with a sobbing tone, "Big brother, quickly save me." Lan Shonhua scanned the ground and picked up a broken wooden stick that someone dropped on the ground and swung it at Lan Tingyue's body. "You bastard, always causing trouble. Today, I'm going to beat you to death here." Chapter 629. Lan Shonhua used half a stick to beat Lan Tingyue's face. Lan Tingyue's nightmare that had just ended began again. He clutched his head and wailed, begging for mercy. "Big brother, don't hit me, I'm going to die. Big brother, spare me, I know I was wrong." If there was a ranking list, Lan Tingyue could be chosen as the most tragic person in watching today. Which heavenly king and great immortal did he offend? First, he was beaten up by his cousin. When his own brother came, he thought a savior had come. Was there a savior who would beat someone to death like this? Lan Shanggu stood at the side and watched coldly. When even he felt that Lan Shonhua was too heavy-handed, he stopped him. "Shonhua, forget it. He's just a child who doesn't know any better. Who would lower themselves to his level?" Lan Shonhua once again raised the wooden stick and smashed it against Lan Tingyue's back twice. Only then did he stop, panting heavily. "Normally, I have taught him to be humble and cautious, to know his place and not to do anything illegal. Big brother, what wrong did this kid do today?" Lan Shanggu looked at Lan Shonhua with a ruminating gaze. "You don't know what he did, so you swung the stick to hit him? Anything that can make big brother angry is naturally not a good thing." Lan Shonhua looked as if he was thinking from Lan Shanggu's perspective. Lan Shanggu sighed softly. "Shonhua, it's been a few years since we sat together to drink and chat, right?" Lan Shonhua nodded. "Big brother has been busy, so I didn't find the time." "It's not that there's no time or opportunity, but there's a gap between us," Lan Shanggu said. Lan Shonhua's expression froze, then instantly returned to normal. He smiled. "Big brother Shanggu, why do you say that? I've always treated you as my most respected and admired big brother. Something like a gap has never appeared in my heart." "Really? You're not secretly happy that I ran away from home? You're not happy that you've taken over the position of successor? You're not worried that I'll come home and take away everything you have now?" "Big brother, I've never thought like that," Lan Shonhua said with a serious face. "If I have such a thought, let me be struck by lightning." "Bullshit. Being struck by lightning is the biggest bullshit," Lan Shanggu sneered. "If I could control thunder and lightning, I'd throw a bolt of lightning and split anyone who said such a thing in half. You know you're lying, and neither the sky nor the lightning will strike you. So, you swear as if you're drinking plain water, and you don't have any psychological burden?" Lan keeps his promise. "I can be honest with you. You occupied my previous position, and I felt uncomfortable. I asked Grandpa to let me take care of the Lan family, but he didn't agree. This was what I was thinking. Moreover, I can also tell you that if I want something, I will try my best to get it. I will do it openly and above board. Who doesn't have a bit of selfishness? He was a saint without selfish motives. Are you a saint? Of course not. Do you know what Grandpa said to me when I went back? Lan Shanggu looked at Lan Shonhua and asked. I wasn't there, I don't know. Lan Shonhua's mental fortitude was excellent, but under the aggressive attacks of Lan Shanggu, he had a hard time defending. He once again experienced the ability and strange thoughts of his big brother. He asked me about Jiang Zhulu. I told him it was true. Grandpa was furious. He said that although tigers are fierce, they don't eat cubs. How is this behavior different from beasts? Grandpa also said that father and son killing each other and brothers fighting each other is a tragedy. He didn't ask anything of us except that we don't kill each other. Lan Shonhua, do you think you can do that? Lan Shonhua broke out in a cold sweat and said, I can do that. Let us brothers compete fairly. We won't regret it. Good brother. Lan Shanggu hugged Lan Shonhua's shoulder and said with a smile, this is a good man of the Lan family. Big brother. Lan Shanggu looked at Lan Tinghua lying on the ground and said, Shonhua, please take Tinghua back first. I still have some things to discuss with them. Big brother, don't be rash. When I came in, there were already many people gathered outside, Lan Shonhua sincerely advised. Lan Shanggu patted Lan Shonhua's shoulder and said, Shonhua, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Lan Tinghua's voice was mournful and shrill. It traveled out of the small courtyard and into the distance. Even the parents and elders who came to take their children home were shocked and they heard it. What kind of punishment was their children suffering inside? Thinking of this, their anger rose rapidly. A middle-aged man rushed to the black-clothed bodyguard at the arched door and shouted sternly, let Lan Shanggu out. Say that Li Mingliang wants to see him. If he still wants to live in Huaqing, he better give me face. What right does the little thief of the Lan family have to be so arrogant? Let me tell you, if anything happens to my daughter, even if a strand of her hair is hurt, I will burn down his lousy Blue Mountain Club. Why is he so arrogant? A middle-aged woman bared her fangs and brandished her claws. Someone, charge in, whoever can save Wang Ming, I will reward him with 1 million, no, 5 million. A middle-aged man wearing glasses and carrying a black briefcase walked over. He looked at the old butler of the Blue Mountain Club, Fang Hao, and said, Sir, I am Lin Zheng, a partner of the Tianqing law firm. Our boss's son, Mr. Chen Guojing, was imprisoned when he was spending money at your club. I want to understand the situation. First, I need you to guarantee Mr. Chen Guojing's safety. If he suffers any harm, we will pursue the civil and criminal responsibility of the Blue Mountain Club and everyone in the club. Second, what law did Mr. Chen Guojing break to be imprisoned by you? Third, who imprisoned Mr. Chen Guojing? Does the other party have the right to restrict the personal freedom of others? Fang Hao stood up straight and said, Lawyer Lin, please wait a moment. Our boss said that he will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Lin Zheng sneered and said, an entertainment venue imprisoning a consumer for no reason. This kind of behavior is already very unsatisfactory, right? Fang Hao bowed slightly and said, the boss said that he will give you a satisfactory answer. That answer will definitely satisfy you. Let's hope so, Lin Zheng said. We just don't want this answer to make us wait too long. Otherwise, we won't be satisfied. Of course I won't. A clear voice rang out. The men in black split into 2 rows. A tall man walked out from the middle of the crowd. Lan Shanggu, he's Lan Shanggu, he's the bastard who imprisoned our child. Lan Shanggu, hurry up and release my son. Lan Shanggu cupped his hands towards the angry crowd and smiled. Good evening everyone, I'm Lan Shanggu. I'm sure a lot of people here already know me. Lan Shanggu, what do you want? Li Mingliang angrily shouted. Lan Shanggu looked over and smiled. Sorry for the disrespect. So it's Hall Master Li of 14K. Hall Master Li, I don't want to do anything. I just want to discuss a business deal with everyone. You captured our son and daughter, and you still want to discuss a business deal with us? Li Mingliang was furious. What if this business deal is related to your child? Lan Shanggu smiled and asked. What do you mean? It's like this. Lan Shanggu smiled as he scanned the crowd and said, Lan Shanggu had an important guest in the past few days. This guest is really expensive. Normal people wouldn't be able to see her. Lan Shanggu, what are you trying to say? What does your Lan Shanggu's important guest have to do with imprisoning our child? Someone became impatient. Because this guest is very expensive, so I wanted to give her the best I could, and that's exactly what I did. However, someone just had to jump out and cause trouble. Not only did she listen to someone else's song for free, she even went to the guest's room to cause trouble. Kicking the door, cursing, and even asking the guest how much the price is. You're all seniors here, please enlighten me. If something like this happened to you, how would you deal with it? Who is this guest? Maybe it's your Lan Shanggu who's spouting nonsense in front of us. If it was someone else, I'd be thick-skinned enough to borrow their tiger skin. Lan Shanggu really doesn't dare. Lan Shanggu smiled and said, one of the 7 addicts of Hua Xia, Liqi. Mr. Liqi, I know you definitely haven't seen her before. But you should have heard of her, right? Liqi? How could it be her? Liqi is in the City of Flowers. One had to admit that the influence of idols was huge. Many of the people present had heard of Liqi's name, and there were even diehard fans of Liqi, although they might not have even heard the songs that Liqi played. How can you prove that she is Liqi? Does Mr. Liqi need anyone else to prove it? Lan Shanggu asked back. If it were you, would you dare to use the name of Liqi to do something like this? Lan Shanggu, don't use the name of Liqi to scare us. Tell us, what kind of business do you want to talk about? Lan Shanggu laughed heartily and said, isn't this the point? Your child went to kick the door and cursed. I have to give Mr. Liqi an explanation. You all know how powerful Mr. Liqi is. Even if you don't know, you should be able to imagine. Her fans are not just the few of you and my Lan Shanggu. If I don't handle this matter well, the Lan Shanggu Club will have to take the blame. So, everyone, tell us, how can we appease Mr. Liqi? Li Mingliang thought for a while and asked carefully, is 1 million enough? Chapter 630. A person's name was like a tree's shadow. One of Hua Xia's 7 addicts, music addict. Even if most people wished to meet her, they would never have the chance to hear her perform. However, music addict was famous and had many followers. If music addict were to get angry, her fans would definitely tear those who dared to offend her into pieces. Furthermore, music addict had been famous for many years. How many resources and connections did she have? These were all factors that everyone had to consider. Li Mingliang was the person in charge of 14K in Huacheng. He was famous for his ferocious fighting style. Even someone like Li Mingliang came up with the idea of spending money to get rid of the problem. This proved that music addict was indeed very powerful. 1 million. Lan Shanggu shouted, Mr. Li Mingliang is willing to pay 1 million to appease music addict. I can feel Mr. Li Mingliang's sincerity. However, who is music addict? Pure as ice and clean as jade, untainted by worldly affairs. She pursues the pinnacle of music all her life. Mr. Li Mingliang, do you really think it's appropriate to use something as dirty as money to make a deal with music addict? Li Mingliang panicked. Everyone's gaze was focused on him. It was as if he had really used money to insult music addict. Li Mingliang wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked at Lan Shanggu with a flattering smile. Brother Lan Shanggu, what do you think is appropriate? You know that I haven't studied much and always like to fight and kill. Can you help me come up with an idea? How can I redeem my son Li Xiang? Is 5 million enough? Lan Shanggu strode forward and patted Li Mingliang's shoulder. Brother Li, since we're brothers, how can I not help you when you're in trouble? To be honest, it's not very elegant to talk about money with music addict. Who is music addict? Does she need your 3 to 5 million? Then what should we do? Li Mingliang grabbed Lan Shanggu's arm and asked. I have an idea. Not only can it appease Mr. Luqi's anger, but it can also be done in an elegant and humorous way. It will also become a good story. Brother Li will become a distinguished gentleman that people will talk about in the future. What idea? Brother, what idea? Quick, teach me. It's impossible for Mr. Luqi to accept money. There are so many rumors about Mr. Luqi. Have you heard of anyone paying her? Lan Shanggu looked at Li Mingliang and asked. Li Mingliang shook his head and said, no. Right. Aren't you going to incur the wrath of the masses by giving money to them? Lan Shanlai said with a smile. Seeing that Li Mingliang was about to panic again, Lan Shanggu patted the back of his hand to calm him down and said, Mr. Luqi has come from afar, shouldn't we, as the hosts of the City of Flowers, show our hospitality? What does Brother Valley mean? If Brother Li gives Mr. Luqi a piece of jade, a painting, a zither, and a flute, do you think this bad thing will become a good thing? Did dirty things become elegant things? In the future, when people talk about Mr. Luqi, they will naturally mention that Mr. Luqi was attacked by a few drunken youths in the City of Flowers. The youth's father felt very guilty and gave him a zither as an apology. Yes, it's the zither that Mr. Luqi is playing with now. Brother Li, think about it. If people think of you when they talk about Mr. Luqi, they will think of you when they talk about you and the zither that Mr. Luqi is using. How big of a face do you have to give? Li Mingliang's face was flushed and he looked very excited. He grabbed Lan Shanlai's arm tightly and said, Thank you, Brother Valley, thank you, Brother Valley, this is a good idea. Where can I buy a zither? I'll go buy it now, Lan Shanggu glanced at the old butler Fong Hao. Fong Hao immediately stood up and said, Mr. Li, our Blue Mountain Club has a treasure house. It happens to have a good zither called K-Bai. Although it's not as famous as Green Damask and Jiao Wei. It's still a rare treasure, K-Bai. That's it. I'll take it. Li Mingliang said heroically. Mr. Li, this K-Bai is Boss's collection. I'm afraid Boss won't be willing to part with it. Li Mingliang looked at Lan Shanlai with a pleading expression and said, Brother Valley, please help me to the end. Can you help me settle this matter? Just think of it as me owing you a favor. Lan Shanggu hesitated for a while and sighed, since Brother Li has spoken, I can't refuse your request. This K-Bai is indeed part of my collection. I bought it back for 10 million, and also found a top-notch zither master to maintain it. How about this, I'll part with it for 12 million, and let it become a wonderful story between Brother Li and Mr. Luqi. When Li Mingliang heard 12 million, his expression stiffened slightly. But when he heard that he could make a legend with Mr. Luqi with just 12 million, Li Mingliang's eyes lit up once again. That was one of Hua Xia's 7 fanatics. Luqi. Not everyone had the chance to gift a zither to Luqi. He, Li Mingliang, was a famous general in the history of music. This was something that no amount of advertising money could buy. I'm taking this K-Bai. Don't fight with me. Li Mingliang shouted. Brother Valley, I'll write you a check right now. Fong Hao walked over and said, Mr. Li, you can go and inspect the goods first. You can write a check afterward. Li Mingliang nodded and said, Okay, I'll go and inspect the goods first. What about my son? Lan Shanggu smiled and waved his hand. Brother Li, once Mr. Luqi calms down, your son will naturally appear in front of you. Good. Good. Thank you, Brother Valley. Li Mingliang clasped his hands and turned to follow the old butler to the treasury. Brother Lan, I also want to buy a gift for Mr. Luqi. Can you recommend something for me? Sister Li, it's good that you have such thoughts. I'm just afraid that Mr. Luqi won't like ordinary items. Unusual items are too expensive. Of course it's expensive. The woman in luxurious clothing sneered. That Li Mingliang is just a hooligan. If he can give Mr. Luqi a 12 million K-Bai, how can our Zhu family not give something decent to Mr. Luqi? Brother Lan, don't think about saving money for our Zhu family. You have to recommend me a gift that's better than Li Mingliang's K-Bai. You have to make others mention my gift and they mention Mr. Le Qi. Of course we have to mention Sister Li Mi who gave Mr. Le Qi a gift, right? Lan Shanggu laughed loudly. Li Mi's expression was a bit shy. She said, I've heard Mr. Le Qi's performance before. That song really belongs in the heavens and stinks on the earth. I've always thought that if I had the chance to meet her, how great would that be? Now that there's such a chance, our Zhu family naturally won't fall behind. Lan Shanggu nodded, thought seriously, then said, Mr. Le Qi likes flowers. Every time he performs, he would place all kinds of flowers at his place of residence. I have a peony painting in my treasury. It was painted by a famous Tang dynasty master. How about Sister Li take a look and see if you're interested? That's great. Li Mi nodded happily. Valley, I owe you a favor today. Sister Li, you're too kind. Brother Valley, can you recommend me a gift as well? Brother Lan, where's your treasury? Can I go in and pick a couple of gifts? Nephew Valley, you have to help me. My grandson is disobedient and offended Mr. Le Qi. I have to show my sincerity to Mr. Le Qi on his behalf. Did my son offend Mr. Le Qi? What? No, this bastard, useless coward. Lan Shanggu pushed all of them to the treasury of the Blue Mountain Club and let them choose their gifts. As long as they picked one and mentioned his name, they would get a 10% discount. These people were all grateful. They all wanted to have an intimate encounter with their idol. Even if it was just a name, it would be good. Lin Zheng, a lawyer from the Tianxing law firm, coldly watched this scene unfold. After Lan Shanggu sent away the last, pitiful helper, Lin Zheng carried his briefcase and walked over. He said sarcastically, Young Master Lan, you're good. You used Le Qi's name as a tiger's skin. No one dared to argue with you about beating people up. You even tricked them into buying your junk that won't sell for 10,000 years. You established your reputation and made money. I have to say, this is really amazing. Lan Shanggu laughed and looked at Lin Zheng. He said, after being with smart people for so long, I naturally have to learn to be smarter. In the past, I would never have done such a shameless thing. Later on, I found out that my friend not only did it, but it was also very likable. So, I secretly remembered his routine and wanted to experiment it on the spot when I had the chance. Today, I tried it out and found that the effect was really not bad. Mister, do you want me to recommend a gift for you? No need. Lin Zheng rejected him firmly. They were fooled by you. I, Lin Zheng, wouldn't do such a stupid thing. I've already stated my purpose of coming here. I want to see my client and ensure his personal safety. I like dealing with smart people. Lan Shanggu nodded. He said, who did you say you wanted to see? Chen Guojing. Lin Zheng said. Chen Guojing, the son of the big boss of Tiandu Real Estate. Oh, so it's him. Lan Shanggu thought seriously and said, you might not be able to ensure his personal safety. What do you mean? Because I've already ensured that his personal safety is very dangerous. Lan Shanggu said with a smile. Chapter 631. Lan Shanggu, don't go too far. Lin Zheng's face was full of anger. If anything happens to Lin Guojing, we definitely won't let it go. Lan Shanggu sneered and said, I'm bullying you, so what? Lan Shanggu, look, it's true that people who aren't from the same family don't enter the same door. I was wondering why I felt a little familiar looking at you. When Chen Guojing was scolding me, he was also very arrogant, but I beat him until his face was swollen. He lay on the ground and pretended to be dead. He didn't even move when I kicked his butt. Now you're playing the same trick again. First, you threaten me and act like I'm not afraid of you. Then, you act like you're angry after being slapped in the face. Lan Shanggu looked at Lin Jing unkindly and said, I'm not giving face to your Chen family today. What can you do to me? Lan Shanggu was no longer interested in talking to him. He turned around and walked towards the small courtyard inside the clubhouse. Lin Zheng's face turned green and then white. He stood still for a while before remembering that he had to confirm young Master Chen's safety. He also rushed into the courtyard. "Sir, I'm sorry, you can't go in," the man in black stopped him outside. "Lan Shanggu, let me in, or I'll call the police," Lin Zheng shouted at Lan Shanggu's back. Lan Shanggu turned around and smiled. "No need to trouble you. I'll call the police too, attacking a woman and smashing my private clubhouse. The police will be here soon." Lin Zheng's face turned green. He took out his phone from his pocket and started to make a call. Lan Shanggu walked next to the willow tree and saw that Luqi's room was still closed. He said, "Still not out?" "No." "There's no movement either?" "No." "If we stay here any longer, their children will run out and call us uncle," Lan Shanggu said. "Should we prepare the red packets in advance?" The willow tree looked at Lan Shanggu and said, "You've earned a lot of money by using Luqi's name, right? Jealous?" "Humph. I had no choice," Lan Shanggu said. "If I didn't know that young master had such a deep relationship with Luqi, I could have pretended not to know anything about this. However, since I already knew that he had a close relationship with Luqi, and Mr. Luqi happened to be wronged at the Blue Mountain Club in Orchid Valley, I had no choice but to stand up for her. It's rare for Mr. Luqi to come to Huacheng. We should ask her to bring back some local specialties." Pointing at the young masters lying on the ground in the courtyard, he said, "It just so happens that these idiots jumped out to make trouble, so naturally, their fathers have to make some contributions." The willow tree's face was full of disdain as he said, "You just want to make some money after showing off your power. Do you really need to make yourself so great?" Lan Shanggu laughed and said, "I knew I couldn't hide anything from Brother Lu Shu. Why don't we not give this gift to Mr. Luqi, and each of us will get half of it?" "I don't need this." The willow tree refused. "It's better if you take it alone. However, you are the one who took the money, so naturally you have to bear the responsibility." "What responsibility?" Lan Shanggu laughed and said, "Do you think I'll be greedy for this money? You underestimate my Lan Shanggu. This is a gift I prepared for Mr. Luqi. I'm sure Mr. Luqi will be satisfied." A small crack appeared on the wooden door. Lan Shanggu and the willow tree thought that Fang Yan and Luqi had come out, so they looked up in surprise. The green-clothed boy looked at them angrily and put a finger to his mouth to make a shush gesture. Lan Shanggu and the willow tree were embarrassed. They had never been shushed like this since they were young. Not to mention that they were being shushed by a kid who was so much younger than them. Lan Shanggu was like a child who made a mistake. He nodded his head, indicating that he would be more careful. The willow tree turned his face away, indicating that he had nothing to do with the person who spoke loudly. His voice had always been very low and gentle. Clang, the door was closed again. Our hearts are connected, and we can't control our emotions. "Fang Yan, I've been looking for you for 3 years. Luqi's voice was very pleasant, just like the music she played. The content of Luqi's words was very pleasant. Fang Yan didn't expect that Luqi would confess her love to him at their first meeting. "Fang Yan, I've been looking for you for 3 years. How much love and affection did she have to say such words to someone?" Fang Yan felt very painful. Luqi was a very good and charming woman. She was a woman who could resonate with him. However, he already had Yiro. He could only cruelly refuse her love. This was very cruel to Luqi, and it was also very uncomfortable for him. Fang Yan stood behind the screen and said softly, "We haven't seen each other for 3 years since we parted at the Maple Leaf Club. That time when I first heard Mr. Luqi's heavenly music, I was shocked. I wanted to find a way to meet the music master who could play such a music movement, but something happened, so I put it on hold for 3 years. When I was playing, I felt a little strange, as if I was being watched by a pair of familiar eyes, He understood every note I played and could empathize with the feelings I wanted to express. I was happy, and he was happy. I was sad, and he was even more sad than me. When I played the most exciting part, I could almost see him laughing wildly and wailing. I knew that I met the fated person my master talked about. That was my most hearty performance, and also my most emotional performance. I wanted to know what kind of person could enter my world and enter the world of the 12 barriers of sound I specially set up. After the song, I immediately asked my disciple Wanwan to go outside to find the fated person. Unfortunately, she was misled by the skin and asked the wrong person. I asked him to stand for a while, and he took the initiative to leave. He was also a rare smart person. I asked him to stand for a while, and he took the initiative to leave. This sentence conveyed too much content. In the eyes of Fang Yan, these two were the smartest people in the world. Later, I asked around and found out that an interesting thing happened at the Maple Leaf Club at that time. Fang Yan touched his nose and quickly changed the topic. He said with a smile, "I finally met him today. People who meet each other will meet again. This is God's will." Yes. This is God's will. Fortunately, your performance that day was so obvious, otherwise, how could I find you in the vast sea of people? Why did you find me? To get rid of the knot in my heart. Luqi said. Knot in your heart? Fang Yan was startled. What knot in our heart? Fang Yan, come here, the screen is not for the fated. Luqi's voice came. Fang Yan was excited again. Luqi invited him over. He could finally meet the legendary Luqi. Fang Yan clenched his fists and walked through the screen. As soon as he walked over, he was greeted by a pair of beautiful and deep eyes like the stars in the sky. Her facial features weren't stunning. Her eyes weren't big enough, her nose wasn't straight enough, her lips weren't thin enough, and her chin wasn't sharp enough. However, when these inadequacies were combined together, the beauty they displayed was multiplied exponentially. The longer one looked at her, the more beautiful she became. She was dressed in a classic white robe that dragged on the ground. The hem of the white robe was embroidered with a crane spreading its wings. The crane was vivid and lifelike, as if it could break out of the dress at any time. She held a simple green flute in her hand. The green color of the bamboo itself had not faded, but it was smooth and bright after being caressed. It seemed that Luqi liked this bamboo flute very much. It was said that Luqi liked flowers, all kinds of flowers. Expensive, ordinary, bright, fragmented, and even nameless wildflowers on the mountain paths. As long as the music addict was around, there would be a myriad of fragrances surrounding it and the atmosphere of spring would be overflowing. Fang Yan stared at Luqi with wide eyes and asked, "Who are you?" "I am Luqi, why are you so young?" Fang Yan couldn't help but ask the question in his heart. Luqi had been famous for decades. In his mind, even if she was not a doddering old woman, she was still a very young old woman. It was because of this thought that Fang Yan did not look forward to meeting Luqi. Now it seemed that she was so young. A girl? A woman? This question is very rude. Luqi smiled and said softly, "I am sorry. I know it is taboo to ask a woman's age. I am just curious, how do you maintain your beauty? What brand of cosmetics do you usually use?" "I don't use cosmetics." Luqi smiled and said, "I just pay attention to my diet. I eat wild fruits and grains, use flowers to make tea and wine to drink, play the flute and the zither, and read ancient and modern classics. I am not bothered by external affairs, and am not tempted by fame and fortune. Naturally, I can stay young forever." Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, saying, "If my two friends outside knew that I came in and talked to Luqi about beauty, they would probably break down. Clothing, food, shelter, and transportation are the foundation of life. Is there anything more precious than these four things? There really isn't." Fang Yan smiled and said, "That is why we are talking about the greatest invention of mankind. Right, I have another question to ask you. As the Luqi of Huaxia's 7 addicts, do you usually feel a lot of pressure? Luqi pursed her lips and smiled again, saying, Fang Yan, you are really an interesting person. You used a line from Tang Bohu touches the autumn fragrance. I have also seen this movie. I like it very much. Chapter 632. Many boys had tried their best to make an appointment with the girl they liked, but always lost the precious opportunity because the topic was inappropriate or because the goddess felt that you were a boring person and had nothing to say to you. If you did not look like Wu Yanzu or your father was not Wang Jianlin, they would not give you a second chance. Therefore, the first impression was very important. Of course, Fang Yan would not make the mistakes of those rookies. As the number one Prince Charming of Swallow Dock, he had a lot of experience in picking up girls and being picked up. He knew what the goddesses wanted with just one look. He knew that they were not interested in this topic with just one small movement of the goddess and quickly changed the channel. Fang Yan did not want to talk about music with the music addict because he did not understand and that would expose his ignorance. Fang Yan did not want to talk about martial arts with the music addict because he did not understand and that would expose his ignorance. So, what should people talk about when meeting for the first time? Fang Yan thought about it and decided to use the old way he used to pick up girls. First, praise the other party for being young and beautiful and having good skin. Second, ask about the other party's health and maintenance tips. Whether it was a woman or a goddess, they would find it difficult to refuse others' praise. If you could compliment someone with a sense of hierarchy or freshness, it would be easier to gain points in front of the goddess. In addition, let the goddess take the initiative to talk. After throwing out a topic, quietly wait for her reply. After she had said a lot of things, he threw out a second question from what she had said. Everyone has the desire to show off. Leave the opportunity to show off to the goddess, quietly listen to her talk and give affirmation and approval in time. In this way, the chatterbox between the two was opened, and the relationship between them naturally became closer. Moreover, the goddess felt that you were thoughtful and not boring. The next time she wanted to show off and talk, you would be the first person she thought of. After Fang Yan used this trick, the effect was very obvious. The two people who met each other for the first time happily talked about health and movies. In an instant, they became infinitely closer to each other, as if they were close friends who had known each other for many years. A lot of people like Journey to the West, but I like Tang Bohu touches the fragrance of autumn more, because I feel that the characters in it are especially lively. Every time I see him draw, I feel especially excited, as if I'm the one waving the brush and splashing the ink. As the head of the four great talents in Jiangnan, Tang Bohu disguised himself as a slave for the girl he liked. When the Hua family was in crisis, he stepped forward bravely and stunned the audience with his spear. He almost catered to all the fantasies of women. He played out the story of Cinderella and the domineering president in the most unconventional way. Moreover, even though he knew that the domineering president already had 7 or 8 wives before him, he did not feel the slightest disgust. Instead, he had infinite sympathy for the domineering president, in the history. Actually, Master Xing has another movie that's not bad. It's called Death Inquisitor. Although it's not as well known as the other movies, the interpretation of the human heart and the changes in the male lead's mental journey are very interesting. The biggest change in his mental journey was God of Cookery. The ups and downs of life are just like that. From health to Stephen Chow, from Stephen Chow to Hua Xia's movies, from Hua Xia's movies to the history of international movies, and then to the music in classic movies. Finally, the two reached an agreement. If Fang Yan was the male lead in a movie, Luqi would accompany the music in his movie. This was something that Luqi had never done before. Her music was independent and pure. She disdained to be associated with anything. It was a well-deserved protagonist. However, she agreed to do such a thing for Fang Yan. It was clear to see how far their relationship had developed. The child in green was holding the teapot and dozing off. When she closed her eyes, her master and Fang Yan were chatting. When she opened her eyes, her master and Fang Yan were still chatting. Fang Yen gulped down the herbal tea in the cup and looked at the music addict with a satisfied expression. He said, "People outside must think that we are talking about the multiple realms of music. At the very least, the topic should be the source of your creation and creative ideas." Are we getting off topic? Luchi shook her head and said, "I'm obsessed with music, but music is not everything in life. A writer's life is not always about writing, and an artist's life is not always about painting. Only by living can I create works that touch people's hearts. I'm just an ordinary person like you. I'll go shopping like an ordinary person, eat at roadside stalls, and buy a pair of jeans that cost 100 yuan. I'll try all kinds of lifestyles. But the essence of doing all of this is still for music?" Fang Yen asked with a smile. Luchi nodded and said, "If it was before, would think that I was doing it for a living. But now, I have to confess to everyone, I'm doing it for music. When there's a true intention in your heart, everything becomes utilitarian. It's all right. My greatest ambition is to make a good piece of music. I wish you success." Fang Yen, "What? Maybe I need your help," Luchi said with a serious expression. Fang Yen grinned and said, "If it's anything else, I can help. But you said music, I really can't help you with that. I've never had any musical talent since I was young." Luchi's expression was solemn as she said, "No, you can definitely help." Fang Yen saw that Luchi didn't seem to be joking and realized the importance of the problem. He looked at Luchi and asked, "Are you serious? How can I help you?" "Wait until the opportunity comes," Luchi said. "There have been several precedents for this." "Precedents?" "My master also met his fated person. So, they created the song, Su Wu Shepherds. After my master's master met his fated person, he created the song, Bright Moon, which is a masterpiece that can be passed down for generations." "Your master is?" "The previous generation's Luchi." Fang Yan's eyes widened as he asked, "The title of Luchi can be inherited?" "The title of Luchi has existed for hundreds of years, and every person who has held the title is a member of the music gate. Each generation's Luchi will choose an excellent successor and impart all of his knowledge to her so that she can become the best musician and performer. This way, no one in the outside world can compete with her. Furthermore, Luchi is extremely strict when it comes to accepting disciples. If her disciple isn't skilled enough, she would rather let the position of Luchi remain empty than push her disciple away." Fang Yen pointed at the green-robed boy who was sleeping next to him and asked, "She's the next Luchi?" "Wan Wan is talented and has a high chance of becoming the next Luchi after me, unless an even more talented person appears in the music gate. This is what it means to be born well rather than learn well." Fang Yen sighed softly. "So the title of Luchi has been taken up by people like you." Luchi chuckled and said, "That's exactly what it means to promote a virtuous person." Fang Yen thought, Mo Qingdi is one of Hua Xia's 3 dragons, should I inherit his title as well? Hua Xia's azure dragon Fang Huahua, that sounds quite impressive. "I've learned another big secret," Fang Yen said with a smile. "However, I also have a little secret to tell you." "What is it?" "I'm afraid someone wants to borrow your tiger skin," Fang Yen said. "Is it the Nalan mountain valley outside the gate?" "That's right," Fang Yen smiled and replied. "This person's thoughts are complicated and pervasive. I'm sure he won't let a great deity like you go." Luchi nodded and said, "He stood up for me, so I owe him a favor. If he wants to borrow it, I'll lend it to him." "You're such a kind person. Isn't he your friend?" I don't know him very well. I wouldn't do what he did." Fang Yen immediately cut off his relationship with Lan Shanggu. Luchi stood up, walked to Gu Jing in the corner, and said, "I'll use a song called Hero to thank our friends from Flower City for their hospitality." The sound was clear, then became passionate. "A hero cherishes a hero, sending him off again and again." The blue-clothed child sent Fang Yen out. Fang Yen smiled and nodded at her. "This child will be the future Luchi. This kind of thing, it's definitely done behind the scenes." Lan Shanggu came up and asked, Did Miss Liqi invite us in? Fang Yan shook his head. Lan Shanggu's expression was full of regret, saying, I prepared such a generous gift for her, but I don't even have a chance to see her. She said to thank our friends from Flower City for their hospitality, so she gave us a song called Hero. Lan Shanggu laughed and said, so Miss Liqi knows me, she called me Hero. This was a man who was easily satisfied. Bang, a huge figure was thrown into the courtyard. Bang, another black figure was thrown in. The black-clothed men guarding the arched door couldn't retaliate at all, they were silently thrown out like sandbags. Lan Shanggu's expression was gloomy, saying, the Qin family is too arrogant. While saying so, he strode towards the arched door. Fang Yan and the willow tree looked at each other, then they also followed. A middle-aged man wearing a flowery long gown strode over, casually waving his hand. The black-clothed men who tried to stop him fell to the side. One man and one horse, it seemed like they couldn't be stopped by 1,000 men. Lan Shanggu raised his sword and stood in front of the flowery-robed man, shouting, who dares to break into my Blue Mountain Club? Get the hell out of here. I'm a love-struck fool, the middle-aged man said with a gentle voice. Lan Shanggu laughed loudly, saying, ha ha ha, I've never seen someone call themselves a love-struck fool. Lan Shanggu's laughter slowly stopped, looking at the middle-aged man in disbelief, asking in a low voice, what did you just say? Who are you? I'm a love-struck fool, the middle-aged man said again. Chapter 633. I'm a flower addict. I'm a flower addict. Hearing someone introduce themselves like that in a public place, would you think that this person had just escaped from the Malin Mountain Mental Hospital? Most people were unwilling to admit that they were a flower addict, unless they were one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia. Obviously, this flashy guy wearing a colorful robe that looked like he was draped with a painting of 100 flowers vying glamour might really be one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia, flower addict Lin Fuyang. Otherwise, which middle-aged man would hold his head up high and shout that he was a love-struck fool over and over again in front of others with his chest out in satisfaction? Naturally, Lan Shanggu also thought of this problem, so his attitude changed from mockery to awe. The 7 addicts of Huaxia had been famous for a long time, and they were outstanding figures in each field. A slight move in one part could affect the whole body. No one knew what kind of connections and forces they had. Moreover, these people came and went without a trace, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. They were not easy to deal with. It was better not to provoke them. Only fools would fight with lunatics. Who would be willing to be such a fool? Is it senior flower addict Lin Fuyang? Lan Shanggu felt that the Lan family was very unlucky tonight. First, Lan Tingyue was beaten up by him, then Lan Shonhua was ruthlessly ridiculed by him. Now it was his turn to stand up and accept punishment. Whether it was the music addict or the martial addict, they were both important guests of his Blue Mountain Club. As the owner of this club, he had the responsibility and obligation to treat these 2 masters, no, a master and a big milk, well. Lan Shanggu regretted in his heart, if he had known earlier, he would not have invited Fang Yan and Lu Shu to his Blue Mountain Club for a small gathering. Not only did he eat and use his own things, but he also had trouble in knocking on his door. Of course, Lan Shanggu would never admit that he had taken the initiative to provoke and use others to establish his authority, such an immoral idea. It's me. The flower addict Master Lin was a little impatient. He stared at Lan Shanggu unkindly and said, I say, are you done asking? I'm done. Lan Shanggu opened his mouth and laughed, revealing 2 rows of neat little white teeth. He took the initiative to extend his hand to Lin Fuyang and said, Senior flower addict, your presence brings light to our humble Blue Mountain Club. I'm the owner of the Blue Mountain Club, Lan Gulu. I've admired Senior Flower Addict for a long time. Senior Flower Addict, I happen to have obtained a bag of good tea from my place. May I have the honor to invite you to my place for a cup of tea? You don't have the honor. Lin Fuyang rejected Lan Shan Valley's invitation without hesitation. He didn't even bother to shake hands with him. Where's Liqi? I want to see Lu Qi, music addict. Lan Shanggu stole a glance at Fang Yan, who was standing at the side. What he meant was, look, someone is here to look for your old lover again. You brought this trouble upon yourself. What music addict? Senior flower addict, I don't understand what you're saying. Music addict, one of the 7 addicts of Hua Xia, the music addict, Shui Yun, who is obsessed with music. I just heard her playing in the distant Green River Valley. It's in this direction. Hurry up and ask Shui Yun to come out and see me. Lan Shanggu said with a sincere smile, Senior flower addict, I've long heard the name of Senior Lu Qi, but I've never met her. This sentence was true, because Lu Qi didn't even give him a chance to meet her. When saying this, Lan Shanggu glanced at Fang Yan with hidden bitterness. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, but didn't say anything. Before understanding the intentions of the flower addict, he was more willing to be a bystander. I don't know Mr. Lu Qi, so I naturally can't ask her to come out. After a pause, Lan Shanggu continued, besides, even if I know Mr. Lu Qi, she's the same as Senior Flower Addict, an honored guest of my Blue Mountain Club. How can I casually ask her to come out and see others? If Senior Flower Addict comes to our club and someone wants to see you, I can't easily ask you to come out and see others. Senior Flower Addict, don't you think so? A person should have a conscience. The flower addict didn't seem to have a good temper. He said angrily, I'm not asking her to come out and see others, I'm asking her to come out and see me. Senior Flower Addict, you're also a person. I've been friends with the flower addict for many years, it's naturally not a problem for her to see me. The flower addict raised his foot and rushed inside. Lan Shanggu hurriedly blocked his way. Senior Flower Addict, don't be impulsive, you're making things very difficult for me. Get out of my way. The flower addict Lin Fuyang shouted. The smile on Lan Shanggu's face disappeared, and his expression became gloomy. He said, Senior Flower Addict, are you preparing to bully a junior? The flower addict didn't take Lan Shanggu seriously at all. He rushed straight to the center of the courtyard, glanced at the surrounding rooms, and shouted loudly, Lu Shui Yun, come out, I heard your flute. An old friend has come from afar, don't you want to see me? No one answered. All the doors of the rooms were tightly shut. There was no movement at all. Lu Shui Yun, you can't hide. As the flower addict spoke, he used his nose to sniff the air. Then, following the smell in the air, he strode towards the door of a room. Standing at the door, he laughed wildly and said, Lu Shui Yun, let Wan open the door. Otherwise, I'll have to do something that's not very elegant. I smell flowers, roses, lilies, peonies, cloves, hyacinths, chrysanthemums, these are your old habits. Lu Shui Yun, quickly open the door. Creak, the wooden door was opened, and a blue-robed child stood at the door, staring at the flower addict Lin Fuyang with a displeased expression. He angrily said, You're so annoying. Master is already asleep, why are you shouting outside? Don't you know that this is very rude? I knew I was right, Lu Shui Yun really lives here. The flower addict laughed loudly and reached out to touch the child's head, but the child evaded his hand in disgust. Wan, I haven't seen you for a while, you've grown a bit taller, go and wake your master up, tell her that Uncle Lin is here. Okay? I've said it before, master is already asleep, she's already seen a guest today, so she won't be seeing any other guests. Oh, who is it that can make your master want to see you? The flower addict Lin Fuyang stared fiercely at Lan Shanggu, and said, that boy? This guy was a jealous person, and he regarded Lan Shanggu as his biggest rival in love. Who master wants to see has nothing to do with you. The blue-robed child said, go back quickly. I'm going to close the door. The blue-robed child finished and was about to close the wooden door with both hands. Pa! The flower addict Lin Fuyang put his hands on the door, not letting the child close it. He angrily shouted at the music addict in the room, Lu Shui Yun, you're too cruel. We're old friends, and you don't even give us a chance to see each other. Do you really want to be so cruel? Let go of me. The blue-robed child desperately tried to close the wooden door, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do it. How could he compete with Lin Fuyang, who was tall and strong at such a young age? Lan Shanggu's heart ached when he saw the little girl's small face turn red, and the fine beads of sweat on her forehead. He said, "Senior Flower Addict, since Mr. Music Addict is already asleep, why don't you come back tomorrow? After all, it's not polite to disturb a lady's rest in the middle of the night." The flower addict turned around and stared at Lan Shanggu, and said with a displeased expression, "You, get out of my way." Lan Shanggu grinned, and said, "You see, you've insulted me again, I'll remember it all." "So what if you remember it?" Lin Fuyang's face was full of disdain, and very arrogantly glanced at Lan Shanggu, and said, "Are you going to beat me up?" "Ha ha ha." Lan Shanggu was amused by the flower addict Lin Fuyang's words, and said, "You're the flower addict of Huaxia's 7 addicts, how could I beat you up? I have the heart, but I don't have the guts." Lin Fuyang snorted coldly and shouted at Luqi again, "Shuiyun, you know me. If you don't come out, I won't leave tonight. We'll meet again when you come out. If you are willing to stay in this house for a year and a half, I will stand guard outside this door for half a year and a half." Pucci, Lan Shanggu couldn't help but laugh out loud. The love-struck fool, Lin Fuyang, was very unhappy. He angrily shouted, "Brat, what are you laughing at?" "I'm laughing at Senior Flower Addict's words." Lan Shanggu laughed so hard that he couldn't breathe. Mr. Luqi has been living in this house for a year and a half, so of course he has food and drinks. If Senior Flower Addict were to guard this door for a year or so, I'm afraid that she would starve into a dried corpse without food and water, right? "You bastard." The flower addict was enraged by Lan Guanju's words and shouted, "Get lost. This is the 3rd time you've insulted me. I'll remember it." Lan Shanggu looked at the love-struck fool and said, "So what?" The flower addict didn't see Lan Guanju as an opponent of the same level. She once again shouted at Luqi, "Shuiyun, if you don't say anything, you'll what?" Lan Shanggu asked from the side. The flower addict's expression was conflicted. She hesitated for a while and didn't know what to do to express her heartlessness. Commits suicide by cesarean section? Senior Flower Addict, you mustn't do that. Lan Shanggu tried to comfort her. Even if you want to die for love, please don't do it in my Blue Mountain Club. I can't bear this responsibility. Hearing Lan Shanggu's words, Lin Fuyang finally understood what he had to do. He took off the long robe he was wearing and took out a huge pair of scissors from his waist. Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu quickly dodged. They didn't want to be pierced by this pair of scissors. Fang Yan's eyes slightly shivered. He was already in a defensive position. If he dared to make any reckless moves, Fang Yan would beat him up so badly that even his mother wouldn't be able to recognize him. The flower addict raised the scissors and looked left and right. Those who were stared at by him couldn't help but take a few steps back. No one wanted to be the target of this madman. The flower addict finally chose a target. He waved the scissors and rushed towards the center of the courtyard. Everyone panicked and ran in all directions. Even the young masters who had their legs broken and were pretending to be dead crawled towards the arched door with all their might. "I'll kill you all." The flower addict rushed in front of a cypress pine tree in the center of the courtyard and started to cut it with the scissors. Fang Yan and his companions were all stunned by what they saw. You're tuning into the A Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.